Do we know how many people are watching, or is that a thing we find out later?
That's 706.
Right, we're live now, so it's all yours, Fox.
Hello, everyone. This is going to be a free-on-free debate between socialists and capitalists. On the socialist side, we've got Xexizy, Badmouse, and the Finnish Bolshevik. On the capitalist side, we've got Sargon, the academic agent, and Bantu. Now, before I get into the questions and start asking the questions, I'd like to I'm going to start off with asking the socialist side, specifically Xexizy, what their sort of positions are with regards to the strike between socialism and capitalism. So, Xexizy, where do you currently stand on this issue?
Right. So, yeah. Hey guys. I'm Xexizy. I have a small Marxist YouTube channel, and I'm with my friends here today. And basically, in regards to capitalism, we're all communists. Badmouse is an anarchist, and then we've got two Marxists. And obviously, all of us think that capitalism is, well, in general, bad. It's not sustainable, and that a better society would be a socialist society, where the workers themselves own their own means of production, that being factories and offices and wherever else. And we also advocate for the abolition of markets and commodity production as well, and production for profit. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much just the general overview of ours.
Is there anything you want to say specifically about yourself, or?
Me specifically, I would just kind of refer to myself. Obviously, there's 50 different leftist ideologies. I refer to myself mainly just as a Marxist, standard Marxist, but FinBol and Badmouse are slightly different, so I'll let them explain their views. Okay,
and Badmouse, what are your sort of personal views on this matter?
Hi, so I'm more of a libertarian socialist. Came into this through, unlike Xexizy and Finn, I came through this into the anarchist sphere of things, so I came into a different way. And yeah, just generally, I'm opposed to capitalism. Those are my views.
Okay, and the Finnish Bolshevik, what is your views?
Hello. Yeah, I'm the Finnish Bolshevik. I make YouTube videos about communism. I'm a communist, Marxist-Leninist specifically. Yeah, you know what, like Xexizy pretty much said most of it. We oppose capitalism. We are Marxists. Badmouse is more like a anarchist, but you know, we oppose capitalism. We're socialists, communists, whatever.
Okay, and I'm now going to ask the capitalist side. I'll start with Sargon, since this is his channel. What is your sort of introduction to this issue?
Yeah, I'm a Marxist Sargonist. I'm in favour of Haig's conception of capitalism. I think that works best. I don't think we're living in it, but it's what I would like to see.
Okay, and academic agent, what is your general introduction?
Yeah, well, like all sensible people, I started out, I guess, being more lefty when I was younger. So I'd been through my phase of reading, Marxism and Marxist theory and so on, and then basically, grew up, as it were, and saw through empirical evidence and various other things that, capitalism generally is the best way of sorting things out, as we're about to discuss. Like Sargon, I'm also more on the F.A. Hayek side of things, because obviously within capitalist countries, we also have the dichotomy between Keynesianism and, I guess, more supply-side economists like Milton Friedman and so on. I'm obviously more towards the supply side, but even further than that, I'd be more with F.A. Hayek, so that's generally where I am on the spectrum.
Okay, and Bantu Rhino, finally, what is your sort of introduction on this issue?
I guess I'm the only one here that's not a YouTuber, and I'm the chief executive of an insurance company. I studied philosophy in university at the University of Toronto, where I, as well as agents, spent my time as a socialist there, and then proceeded to grow up and conceive of the world quite differently. Big influences on my perceptions of economics would be Schumpeter, would be my main guy, who I generally prescribe to.
Okay, so that's the introductions out of the way. I'm going to move on to the meat of the conversation, which is, of course, the questions. I've got 5 questions here. The way I'm going to do this is I'm going to, say the question first and then ask one side their position on the question, and then I will allow the other side to retort with their own position on the question, and then we'll sort of have an open forum for 10-15 minutes on that question. So the first question is, are markets efficient and sustainable? And I'm going to refer that first to the socialist side, so Xexizy, Finnish Bolshevik, and Badmouse. Feel free to discuss your positions on whether markets are efficient or sustainable.
Right, anyone in particular want to go first here? I've got some stuff I can say.
I'll give it a go if you want.
Yeah, go for it, man.
Alright. Well, markets basically are only set up, they need to have basically a large pool of labour in order to function correctly, basically. So, sorry, I can't think right now. I have to pass on to someone else.
Oh, alright.
Sorry.
That's cool, that's cool. So like, the way that Marxists deal with markets is that we don't really care kind of what type of market we is. We don't really care if it's a free market or if it's a regulated market. What we attack is the very core mechanisms that are inherent to markets themselves. And in fact, throughout the entirety of Das Kapital Volume 1, and I think Volume 2 as well, Marx basically assumed a completely free market. So we're very much dealing with the core mechanisms here. And the thing is, because obviously Marxism is very much more about attacking capitalism than it is talking about socialism. So there are really, really loads of kind of avenues to go down when we're talking about why we don't like markets. But in particular, I think there are things like the automation crisis, in particular having in third world countries that rely on production lines or sweatshops and rely on this cheap labor to supply demands in the first world. The overproduction crisis, which is something that's kind of been around with markets since the Industrial Revolution, where we have the ability to create large surpluses for the first time in human history, which go against market mechanisms. The boom and bust cycles, which are inherent to markets. If you look at history over the last 100 years, every roughly 15 years, we have an economic crash for one reason or another, then slowly begin to recuperate and have a boom. There's artificial scarcity as well, where we're intentionally limiting our access to resources just to keep market prices steady. But I think most of all about all of this, probably one of the most inherent things to markets would be the falling rate of profit, which is over time, the rate of profit derived from commodity production has steadily been falling. And there is actually conclusive evidence to show this is happening. And if you want, I will link this in the Hangout for you guys to take a look at. So, those are basically kind of... That I know I just kind of like threw a lot there, but like I said, there are so many places to start. And I don't know, Finnish Bolshevik, if you want to kind of delve into any one of those in more detail.
I'm just going to briefly interject here. The link that you put in the Hangout, the people watching the stream might not be able to see that. So I think it would be easy to say what these people need to look into, the thing that they need to Google in order to find that relevant information, that relevant source.
Right, okay, so if you just Google Piketty against Piketty, the tendency of rate of profit to fall, it should come up. I hope it would. So are the markets efficient and sustainable? To me, like the whole, it's like what they define as efficiency. Are they efficient? Well, they're not efficient in the sense that, let's say something could be produced locally, but it's much cheaper somewhere else, so they produce it elsewhere, and then they spend great amounts of money and resources to transport this commodity to some other place. And it might make sense in terms of profits, like it might actually make you a lot of profits to produce in cheap countries and then ship the goods to somewhere else, but it's not exactly rational or efficient if we're thinking about just using resources. And do they provide for people rationally? The whole rationality is centered around profits. It's not centered around people. So
you can have millions of people without access to food, water, housing, and all that. And you can even at the same time have lots of food being wasted and lots of empty houses, and it might make perfect sense economically to say have lots of empty houses because the house might be an investment. So actually using the house might actually be more trouble than it's worth. You might not want to rent it, you just want it as an investment because you think the prices of houses are going to go up. So it's just because the rationality is based on profits and not based on what humans actually need. That's why we get these like insane things of lots of food being wasted while there's actual starvation.
Yeah, can I add to that actually? Yeah, that's a pretty good way of putting it. It's efficient for making profit, but profits don't always match up with what efficiency might be considered to be. For instance, like I touched on artificial scarcity, where we're dumping food or where we keep diamonds intentionally scarce. That's not efficient. Planned obsolescence, where we build things to break over time, that makes more profits in the long run, but it's not efficient in any sense of the word. But the market still does it because the market doesn't care about efficiency, it cares about profits. And again, profits don't always equal efficiency.
I'll just jump in and say, so basically, to summarize my point, the problem with capitalist markets is that they ignore externality. They focus on people as basically machines in a cogs in a machine, and if people are not necessary towards that production line, then they will not be granted the means to their survival. So, yeah.
Great. I've said everything I want to say. What about you guys?
Yeah, like the market. Basically, we all know the market is kind of this force of its own. It's not planned, so it kind of goes with its own logic. And I don't know, like we'll probably get into what you consider is a free market and what is not a free market and stuff like that. But I don't know. Basically, the market just kind of does its own thing without caring about people, and that's why you have these crises. For instance, now you might have an alternative explanation how it's somehow government intervention or something that causes them, but
I think our side's done then.
Okie dokie. I will now direct the same question towards the capitalist side, which is Sargon, Academic Agent, and Bantu Rhino. Are markets efficient and sustainable?
Do you mind if I quickly go?
Go for it.
Yep.
Right. There are a few ways of conceiving of this that I think are kind of missing the point of what a market actually is. And it was the constant use of the term sort of like markets don't care about people, as if markets are somehow separate to people. Markets are made up of nothing but people. And markets, they don't not care about people. They actually really care about what people want.
All they care about.
Yeah, it's literally the only thing they give a damn about. What do people want? So what can be sold to them?
Exactly.
So, yeah, I don't accept that characterization of the market. And the thing is, this is something that I find like anarcho-capitalists do with the concept of government. You know, they try to separate it from the society that uses it and operates in it, and they turn it into a remote evil entity where it's like as if the market's got a plan of its own that's going to come down and do something horrible. They do the same thing, and I think this is a fundamental mischaracterization of the thing that we're talking about. So I reject that out of hand.
Can I jump in on that for 1 second?
Yeah, please do, please.
Yeah, I just want to say, I mean, like as a business operator and owner and executive, I mean, to me, everything that matters is my clients. This is how I make money. I don't make money by making profits. I make money by attracting people to spend money at my business by providing them a product that they want. Okay, I assess the needs of the public, and then I try to meet it the best that I can so that they want to do business with me. This is how it works. It's not about profit. The business has to be arranged in such a way that there is enough money to make profit there. Okay, but I can't have profit if I don't provide something to people that they want. Anyways, go on.
Well, that means that fundamentally you have to be attentive to people. And that's why corporations spend billions doing market research. That involves polling people, and looking at all the data. What are they buying? What do people want? To say that markets don't care about people is really weird, because it makes it sound like you're selling things to machines, which people obviously aren't. Did you want to say anything, Agent?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's any way to talk about this with confronting, I guess, the elephant in the room whenever you're speaking with a bunch of people who call themselves socialists. How does the market arrive at a price? It arrives at a price through a very basic law of economics, which is supply and demand. The more people who want something, okay, and the less there is of something, the more the price goes up. I mean, everybody here, I hope, knows how supply and demand work, but it's exactly that all the time. Okay, so it
can't be anything other than that as well. This
is what I'm saying. It's supply and demand in any economy that's ever been. So whether you're talking about ancient Egypt, Soviet Union, right now, it is just a bunch of people in society who want certain things, and it is, well, how do we work out how to give those people those things at a price point that people can afford? And if you look at people, so basically, I was interested that what I think it was Finnish Bolshevik talked about rational, how the market isn't always rational. Yeah. Well, see, the thing is, a rational system would be like whose reason are we talking about? Okay, what they're talking about is replacing the wills of millions of people, all pursuing their buying things that they want with their own free will, versus basically somebody else just saying, no, I don't think it should be that price. Basically, those are the only two systems that there are, right? It's either everybody decides through their own buying and selling. If they want something, they'll buy it. If they don't, they won't buy it. Versus somebody from on high saying, yeah, I think corn should be worth £2 or £5 or whatever it is. And in history, whenever anybody has done that, whether it be a Roman emperor or the British government when we had the corn laws, or the Soviet, whenever anybody has tried to do those sorts of things, it's led to mass starvation, perversion of incentives, and so on and so forth. So the market is actually the thing that it's really good at is arriving at an affordable price point that millions and millions of people want. So I'll always go back to corn. You can go out in a supermarket right now and buy a can of sweet corn for, what is it, 50p, 40p, 30p. It'll be super duper cheap compared to what the price of corn was in any socialist country, and compared to what the price of corn was in any bloody monarchy, like back before we had free market capitalism. So, yeah, do you want to come in, Bantu?
Yeah, I'd like to jump in on a couple of points quickly. One thing that I don't want to mischaracterize their point, because I do think one of the things that they intend when they say the market doesn't care about people is they talk about the welfare of people. Okay, and they listed a series, because not just about, who can get what they want, but generally the overall welfare of people, because the market does exclude people from participation. Okay, and we'd be foolish to claim that it doesn't. But the problem that I see with the way that the argument is presented is that they're presenting all of these problems with capitalism, but what they have to show isn't that capitalism has problems. Of course it does. No system is absolutely perfect and perfectly meets the needs of everyone. What they have to demonstrate is that socialism does it better. And time again, socialism has shown that it cannot. Okay, that it doesn't respond to the needs of people. That's an extremely fragile system. As with any top-down system cannot account for the chaos of the world. When we started our business, okay, I remember we spent a year doing our business plan. We thought we were airtight. And I remember when we first launched, we sat around in our boardroom after we had just sort of gotten off the ground, and I looked at all the other guys and I said to them, listen, let's do a little thought experiment, okay? It's a year from now and we're out of business. What happened? Okay, and literally no one could answer because our business plan, as far as we concerned, was flawless. We had this all figured out. We knew what was up. Well, we almost went out of business half a dozen times from things that we didn't predict. There's a lot of things you just don't know. There's crazy things that happen. And when you have a centrally planned economy that's based around this concept of we have a few people that have this structured plan that's going to work, it doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Okay, because anything can throw you sideways.
That's a really interesting point, actually. The amount of hubris involved in believing that you have the power to control the entire economy of a nation, let alone, anywhere else.
A business can fail like that. Imagine how complex a nation is.
Exactly, and this is a point that Hayek made repeatedly, that it's so unbelievably complex, and you just don't know what's going to come next, that it's better to set rules and let people follow the rules than try and dictate to everyone what they must have at all times.
And this is another really important point, I think, that is in favor of capitalism and is against any form that tries to deny the free market flourishing, is that the analysis is only ever going to be static at this moment in time. Okay, so right now we can understand the market as it stands right now, but that's always how it has been. Okay, so you go back to 1980 and try to predict like Facebook and like that we'd be having this bloody conversation on YouTube and that would be owned by Google and they would be one of the biggest companies in the world. Unthinkable. Like, you get all those leftist economists, like back in the 70s, saying, yeah, the world's going to be dominated by, Enron.
Exactly.
Enron aren't even in the bloody top 500 now. You know what I mean? Like, the conditions change. The conditions change so dramatically, so rapidly. The calculus for what succeeds in the market can transform overnight. You can get game changers. You can get jobs that exist today that are gone tomorrow, and you can get jobs that you'd never have dreamed of. Like, who'd have thought that somebody like Sargon could make a living making YouTube videos, making fun of feminists? Like, even like,
I don't do that anymore. I can't remember the last video I made about feminists.
you know what I'm saying though? Like,
now I'm making fun of socialists.
Could you have ever dreamed that like there would ever even be that would be a thing, and that could lead to somebody? So this is what I'm saying: is like socialism doesn't have the dynamism. Like Lenin sitting there in his study in 1960 could never have planned that, and nobody could ever have sat down and planned that happening. It's just organic; it just happens.
And that comes right back to Schumpeter's concept that economies are dynamic, that the entrepreneur is the individual that comes in and constantly innovates within an economy and creates new spaces, okay, for new types of technologies to come forward. I mean, towards the end of his life, he was seeing the rise of the big manufacturers and whatnot, the big corporations that were, sucking up all the capital, and he despaired. I mean, I believe towards the end, he thought that, that was the death of the entrepreneur. But then, of course, you had computers. Okay, and new technology arose, and all of a sudden it created new spaces for brand new entrepreneurs to come forth. Okay, and completely turned things on its head. So that's the thing, is that this march of technology, this march of creative destruction where new technologies constantly advance markets, and the fact that markets in and of themselves for entrepreneurs are places for entrepreneurs are like bloodhounds for need. They're out there and they are looking for who can I provide something to? Who can I provide something to? Constantly, and that's why they meet needs partially, is because if there's a need, someone in a free market can go and meet it, however rare it might be.
So
I'm going to interject
one last point.
Yeah.
The claim that the market is irrational and inefficient, I find very bizarre. The market is made up of billions of rational exchanges that happen all over the world, all day, every day. It's nothing but a rational entity. Something irrational in a market would be something like someone building up a big stock of something and then just setting fire to it. It doesn't make sense to call the market irrational because it's made up of rational people doing rational things all day, every day. So I reject the idea that it's rational either. And the idea of like the artificial scarcity, that's still a rational position. From the owners of diamond mines, they're creating artificial scarcity to increase the price of diamonds. That's a completely rational thing for them to do. And I would much prefer artificial scarcity of diamonds than unintentional scarcity of something like bread.
Just one last thing, Fox. The rationality that Sargon is talking about is a really simple concept that somebody like a child of 3 figures this out. You want to buy things for the lowest price that you can, and you want to sell them for the highest that you can. I mean, it's nothing more than that. Nobody, when they're trying to sell something, is they're like, yeah, okay, I'll give it for you for half the price. No, you want to get the most that you can, and you also, by the same token, want to buy it for the least that you can. that is the pure reason that it is built on. So something to keep in mind as we go forward.
Okay, I think, admittedly, I probably gave the capitalist side a bit too much time there in comparison to the socialist side, so I think from now on, in order to make it a little bit more formal, I'm going to time each side. Would you be okay with about 10 minutes maximum for making your statements and then 15 minutes for the open forum? Is that something? Yeah, okay, that's great. So I'm going to refer back to the question once more. This is now the open forum phase. I mean, 15 minutes max, ideally. I mean, I'm quite flexible. We can sort of go slightly over if necessary, but I'll point out once the 15 minutes has been achieved. But are markets efficient and sustainable?
Can I talk about a couple of things?
Sorry, I just really wanted to say really quickly. I did love it when the CEO was talking about another system being top-down. But anyway, do continue.
My system is top-down. But no, hold on one second. I want to respond to that quickly. Because that was really...
I don't know, man. I mean, you guys have had quite a bit of time now. I think we should...
Well, you're going to make a comment like that there's some irony, but guess what? Companies die regularly. We have a limited life cycle. My company is not going to last forever. It is going to... Its life cycle will end shortly because it is top-down and we cannot infinitely adapt forever. So the point being, do you want a government that runs that way? Do you want a society that is automatic?
I don't know. I already said I want the workers to own it. But anyway, FinBol, if you would please make your point.
They're always going to be there.
All right. So Sargon, like you were talking about the all the rationality and stuff, but like we already said that the artificial scarcity is rational in terms of making profits, but it's not rational for getting houses to people, because we know there's empty houses and there's also homeless people. We know this. Let's see. You talked about
that's the problem, right, Sargon? We never said it wasn't rational. The problem is that it's in people's rational. Sorry, we never said it was irrational. The problem is that it's in people's rational self-interest to act in these ways. We shouldn't have a system where it benefits someone to go and burn and dump a bunch of food to keep market prices low. That shouldn't be a thing that people do and then benefit from. But
it actually doesn't benefit anyone to do that, because none of these people actually have no, hang on.
Right, so farmers systematically dump their food in order to not saturate the market. This happens right now today.
Can I come in on the housing point though? Because whenever anybody has said everybody's got a right to affordable housing, and you say you bring in rent controls or something like that, all that you do in that scenario is that you massively drive up the demand for housing, so you still get a shortage. So, the famous example...
We don't have a shortage.
We have
an oversupply.
18 million houses in America. There's about 3 million homeless people.
The famous example was in Sweden, where they built houses at a record rate. It was like a world record of how, and they still had a shortage because they'd set the prices so low that demand always exceeded so...
But I don't care about building houses. We don't need to build any houses. If anything, we got to knock them down. We got too many. No houses need to be built here. We just need to bypass the market mechanisms to give people houses.
You're conflating a public health issue with an economic issue. The vast majority of homeless people are suffering mental illness and things like that. There's a major issue there, and we do have to attend to it. You're not wrong. But your assumption is based on the fact that if these people had access to housing, they would take it. But they don't. They choose not to.
There are still loads of people who would take access to housing. You're assuming that all of these people wouldn't take the housing if they couldn't.
I didn't say that.
You're right. You're assuming that these people exist.
Wait, I'm just going to interject here. I know Sargon was trying to respond to Bantu there, so I'll let Sargon get his point across.
Again, I think that we've fallen into a trap of mischaracterization of the thing we're talking about. When you say homeless people, they're not just a homogenous group, and most homeless people aren't homeless forever. And so you say, well, there are say 3 million homeless in the US. Yeah, okay, but most of them will be temporarily homeless, and
they shouldn't even be that. There's no reason for them to even be that. But anyway,
why not?
Okay.
Because we have houses.
Why not?
Why not? Because we have the houses for them. There's no.
No, we don't have houses for them. No, hang on, stop. Then they aren't entitled to those houses.
Well, all right.
Why are the people who own loads of houses entitled to them?
Because they've earned and paid for them fairly.
By whose labour?
By their own labour.
If we go into this, we're going to get into the whole surplus value extraction thing, and that's a whole different topic. I want to reply. Sorry. I want to reply to a couple other things that you guys said, and I think some of my other comrades want to do that as well. In particular, when you academic agent were talking about supply and demand and how that's all that determines price. That's just flat out wrong. Like this is one of the first points that Marx makes in one of his most basic works. And basically, fluctuations in supply and demand around the equilibrium, they don't actually really mean anything on their own. Because what is a high increase in price from that? What's a low increase? It's all relative on its own without anything to reference to. So what equilibrium is that this references, and what helps us decide whether something is a large or small increase in the fluctuation is the cost of production to actually make this thing that's on the market. This is the staple around.
Okay, let me just
Really, then how come Action Comics #1, which takes about 10 cents to make, is worth $3 million?
I'm sorry?
Action Comics #1. First appearance of Superman. It's worth about $3 million, made about 10 cents. About 10 cents to produce it. How come it's not 10 cents? How come it's $3 million if the labor input,
scarce,
this labor theory of value, come on. If the labor input is what determines the price, then how come it's $3 million?
Labor input doesn't determine prices on the market, though. Like,
that's what Xexizy just said. So if you guys want to make that, you guys want to work that out.
No, that's not what I said. Anyway, let him finish.
The biggest question I'd have for this theory is that if that is true, then why do so many businesses go out of business? And what happens? I mean, okay, they're selling a product, but they're still making a loss. Okay, so explain that to me. If I
actually, FinBol, I guess you can respond to academic agent. I do just want to say in regards to this comic book, what you're actually talking about here is a fluctuation in supply and demand. So the reason why, because the supply is so low for this, that's why it's so expensive. However, the reason that we can say that this is a huge difference between a huge difference in price is because its cost of production is so low.
Okay.
If it didn't have a cost of production,
I'm just going to come
we
in a
wouldn't have
sec.
any way of knowing if that was a big increase or not.
I'm just going to come in a sec because Finnish Bolshevik wanted to mention something about famine and can socialism do things better when there's an opportune moment. That's something he mentioned in the Hangout chat, so I'm going to let him have the stage.
yeah, by opportune moment, I meant opportune moment in this discussion. But
if we talk about the labour theory of value, I think this is an important point that we should get to the end of.
I think that's what Finnish Bolshevik was about to talk about. Yeah, responding to academic agent.
No, like I was just gonna say about somebody brought up like every time somebody has tried to do something. I'm not sure if it was socialism or planning or something, but it's gonna result in famines and like there's famine in countries all the time right now, like in capitalist countries. But the thing is, like
Hold on. I mean, I just can't let.
No,
this...
but can I get you to clarify?
Let us finish this point. We all know what we're going to say to it.
Yeah, but cool. when you said that there's going to be famine, did you mean that socialism causes famine, or what causes it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, what causes famine specifically is the dislocation of people from a market that can supply them with a product. So, I mean, this happened famously, of course. In the Soviet Union, it happened
1917.
It happened in Zimbabwe. It happened in Ethiopia. It happened in China. It happened in Cambodia. I mean, the list just goes on and on.
I get what you mean now. Thank you. So, I think
but
I
just want to add, it didn't happen, for example, when there was a famous drought in the United Kingdom, when we had a hosepipe ban. Like, nobody died of famine then. So, there is that to point out as well.
Alright, I think we are going off topic here. I think that we need to get the conversation back to the question, which is, are markets efficient and sustainable?
Okay,
can I at least say something since he brought it up,
I'm
though?
just going to mention
I think that would be fair.
We have just over 5 minutes left. We have just over 5 minutes left for this topic. But,
well,
okay.
I'll be quick.
Can we get back to the
If FinBol could just make a really...
This seems really important to me. And
it is. I want to talk about it as well, but I think it's only fair if FinBol makes a really quick response to what academic agent says, then we'll get right back to the liberatory value.
Well, come on, let's just talk about this. Because seriously,
let's get to what Sargon has to say.
Yeah, this is driving me crazy, because if labour is what determines value, then there wouldn't be any price fluctuations.
Why?
because the value has been determined.
Value is not the same as price, but we'll get to
value
this
is not the
later.
same as price.
Right, okay, go. Explain your interpretation of the labor theory of value.
Can we get to this later? Because like we were sort of in the middle of something. I'll just make my point quickly.
Well,
and then...
I'd like to get back to the conversation at hand, which is the question.
Okay, sorry. Go on.
So anyway, like when you said that, for instance, in the Soviet Union, socialist policies led to famine. Well, the Russian Empire already had famines all the time. And then when they implemented socialist policies, they had famine for a little bit, and then they stopped. So if socialism was the direct cause of the famines, why did they not continue during socialism? And why were they already in existence in capitalism? And the China thing, like, it's the same thing in China. Like, China had famine for thousands of years, and then
I mean, China literally had famines up until Deng decided he was going to let capitalism flourish, and then at less. I mean,
and let's remember that the famines that happened prior to this were not under capitalist nations.
I just realized Badmouse hasn't really implemented a huge amount, and I think there's some stuff he'd like to add to this, particularly on famines, maybe, or I don't know, Badmouse.
Do I? Oh.
Well, I figured because you hadn't said much, man, and you did just recently make a video on this.
Well, yeah, I agree, yeah. So, again, like I did a video the other day explaining how the fact that, again, ignoring externalities, capitalism is responsible for millions and millions of deaths every single year. The difference is we don't consider those to be attributed to capitalism. We just simply think that's life, that's excuses, inadequate management. We sideline these things, we put it into a different place because we don't consider that to be part of the overall system. We consider the overall system to be just human nature, life. We'll get onto that in another question. But these famines that exist and these lack of food and resources that are put onto places in third world countries are in the interests of capitalists to do that in other countries for their own profit. So I think that's what it does.
In the interest of capitalists to have famines in third world countries?
No, it's not in the interest of that, but it is in the interest of having. It's not in the interest to give them food. That's what I meant.
Yeah,
sorry.
they got no money, they get no food.
Exactly.
Dude, in all of history, whenever there's been these, it happened in the UK when there were the corn laws before, like the free marketeers got their own way. There was a price fix on corn. People were listening to like Thomas Malthus and who thought, who had some population theories. They artificially kept the price of corn high and people were starving. So, I mean, it's not just it's whenever you get a system where you get a government who is artificially trying to mess with the natural flow of the supply and demand, whether by fixing prices, by fixing the cost of labor, it doesn't, wherever you mess around with it,
but
things will go wrong.
Just think about what you're saying, though. Like, if you take a country, let's say it's a country full of peasants, and the peasants can't produce enough, and if there's some peasants who maybe can, but they rather don't produce as much to not saturate the market and whatnot, like, when the government says, we will now produce lots of food, how will that lead to, less food production? Like, all these, I don't understand your argument. You just say that it's by magic it happens.
Can I take a stab at this one, please? Yeah. Okay. So if you go back to right after the Bolshevik Revolution, Lenin comes in and he starts doing the requisitions. So as a result, you've got basically all these people who sit there and go, I have absolutely no incentive to produce more than I personally need. Okay? So that leads to an oppressive system automatically, because now you've got a system where you got to put a gun to their head and say, no, you have to produce more.
Are you referring to war communism?
Then let me.
I don't think you understood the conditions at the time, dude. They literally had to get the army to partake in labor. Like, Russia were completely fucked at that point, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I'm aware.
If
you want to deny that the requisitions,
you're going to have to put guns.
Hang on, guys! Don't interrupt one another. Let Bantu finish his point.
If you're going to deny that the requisitions disincentivize the production of food, then I don't know what to say to you. But the point that's being made about the famines here is that they're structurally necessitated by socialism. Whereas in capitalist nations where you have a famine, it's generally as the result of some outside factor that came in. So potato blight, for example. You've had something like that.
You just made that point.
That was directly responsible.
hang on,
private
everybody.
property.
Hang on. I think we've gone back to the famine question again, which is going off topic once more. We need to go back to the question, which is are
we can move on
efficient
from
or
that.
sustainable?
Yeah, I'd love to.
So in socialism, war and whatever plant diseases, they're not, they don't happen. But in capitalism, those are the only things that cause famine.
Wait, say that one more time. Sorry, could you repeat yourself, please?
Like, people always say that the Chinese famine was caused by massive drought, and that the Soviet 30s famine, like, one thing that contributed was drought and, grain rust. So you just made my argument for me.
No, I didn't. Just because something happens one way one time doesn't mean that there's not other ways that it happens. Okay, so just because socialist nations...
So going back to the market efficiency question, I feel like you guys, you spoke about a weird version of the economic calculation problem at one point, but overall I don't really think you guys addressed some of the points I brought up about, the crises of overproduction, for instance, the automation crisis, the falling rate of profit in particular. I'd very much like to hear what you guys have to think about that, because inevitably markets just aren't going to be able to extract profits anymore. They're not sustainable, and that's part of the question. Are markets sustainable? And they're just not, because the rate of profit is continually falling and there's nothing we can do about it.
All right, I'm just going to mention that the time is now up, so if there's any sort of closing statements that people have to stay on this topic, speak now. So I'll let you finish your points, Xexizy, and I'll allow everyone else to add anything if necessary.
Well, you can consider that my closing statement, then I'll just finish it off now. But yeah, again, I mean, Sargon, you said artificial scarcity was in people's rational interest. You basically proved my point.
No, I didn't say it was in people's
interest.
I just said it was
let Xexizy finish.
And again, just the wastefulness of the market through competition, scarcity, overproduction crises, where it's actually a problem when we produce too many things, because then it saturates the market. It's one of the factors that led to the 1929 crash. And that's not the only factor. I know there's some stuff going on with banks as well, but it is one of the factors. And we always see under capitalism this boom and bust cycle, and there may be different reasons every time, but at the end of the day, it's the markets existing in the first place that allow these things to happen at all. If we do away with markets, the very concept of economic crash just won't exist anymore. We don't have to worry about having some prosperity in some years and then not prosperity in other years. We can just bypass all of this cycle, which is all right. And again, I feel like you guys just didn't win.
Wait, no, hang on, don't interrupt him. Let him finish, and then you can make your closing statement.
I just feel like you guys just didn't really grapple with those core points I brought up about the mechanisms of the market.
This is why I wanted you to...
Hang on, let him finish, and then...
I'm finished.
This is why I wanted you to make the distinction, but I guess we can talk about it later, because...
I'd love to, yeah.
We'll talk about it later. We'll talk about it later on in the debate, because there's a more relevant question we can go on to. I think we've said enough on this.
Okay, one. Is there anything else anyone wants to add to this question?
I'd just like to respond just quickly to Brian on that point about capital. No, it's only in the interests of a capitalist, is what I'm saying, when they are profitable to them. So if you can work, if you can do that sort of stuff, then in the lines of the economy, you are profitable, and if you're not, then frankly the market just says, fuck you. That's a bit...
Okay, anyone else have any final statements?
I would like to make a statement. So, about the markets caring / not caring, like you talked about how all markets care about is people and people's needs, but not really. They care about if they can make money off of that. So, like, you look for people, does this person have money? Is there something I can sell to them? If they don't have money, they don't get a house, they don't get food, they don't get health care. And there's an individual capitalist who might think, I want to sell this guy a good product or a good service. But when we're talking about the market, we're talking about this big system. It's outside of this one capitalist's profit, making scheme. So, like, you can be a really nice guy and you can really want to help people, but it's not really about that.
All right. Agent and Bantu, do you have anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, because I think we're mixing messages here a little bit, because I don't think that any of the three of us on the capitalist side are against mixed economies. Okay? Are any of us?
No, I'm fine.
No, exactly. So none of us are against things like social safety nets and whatnot to look after the more vulnerable. What we're stating is that that's a more efficient way of doing it than using a top-down thing that's supposed to serve everyone equally and create this artificial equality. Okay? That if someone can't participate in the market, fine, they can't participate in the market because they can't. Okay? So we create social safety nets to bring them up to a level of sustenance and subsistence, hopefully better than that if we can possibly, and we do the best job that we can to do it. Okay? And I think that that's a point that's being missed here, is that we're not just casting these people off into the wind and saying, you know, hardcore anarcho-capitalism, like, oh my god, no.
Okay, Agent, is there anything you want to add before I move on?
Only that it's basic reality that markets will come and go, so I don't see how that's a problem. I don't see how it's a problem that prices tend towards coming down. So a TV in 2017 is cheaper than a TV in 1950.
Profits, not prices.
But prices come down too. Nobody the real
but,
prices have come down over time.
I'm not talking about prices. Sorry.
But real price, well, even if I mean, okay, so
my point is, it's just irrelevant.
Don't interrupt it.
And the other thing is that the idea that getting rid of markets can change the underlying reality just misses the fact that markets are only a reflection of the underlying, like a price point. But prices are literally just a reflection of the underlying reality of supply and demand in the first place. It's literally just a symbol of what the. So I don't really understand this idea that if you get rid of the markets, suddenly all these issues will go away. You'll just be faced with exactly the same problems, only without the kind of spontaneous will of millions of people to help you decide where to allocate them.
No, but supply and demand exists in a market, though. Supply and demand doesn't exist in
all right, well, I'm just
going
to sort of move on now. I'm going to move on since we've covered that question in great detail. So I'll admit that something I've been trying to enforce more as the conversation is going forward is that people are sort of interrupting each other. People are sort of talking over one another, not letting someone finish a point. So I will sort of be cutting in when I notice that, and I've just been giving warnings at the moment, but if people persist doing that, I'll temporarily, mute. But we'll move on to the second question. I'll give you. Are you happy with 10 minutes or 5 minutes to answer the question each?
Which question is this one again?
All right, 10 minutes.
I feel like for this one we could get away with 5, but if they want 10, that's fine.
10, and if we don't need to go any longer.
Yeah, 10 minutes. If you've got enough time. But the second question, I'm going to start by asking this to the capitalist side here. Is human society the organic culmination of lived experience or rationally planned by its elites? You have 10 minutes. Go.
Do you want me to start? Do you want me to start with this question?
Go right ahead.
So, I mean, there is this view that society as we know it now is kind of generations of people's experience, and we've come to this point having learned this is kind of the best way to do it. We have laws against kind of stealing and killing people because people have found that a society in which you can kill and steal from each other is a bad thing, and this is where you come to the point. Versus this idea that society is this top-down, rationally planned entity where the elites have control and I kind of weirdly have kind of malign intentions behind everything. And I feel that more, I guess, conspiratorial way of seeing the world as being controlled by a set of people with specific interests, like rational interests, is something that plays to, I guess, the socialist mindset, which is why they think that all that needs to happen is they need to replace our elites, which is like you, a CEO or whatever, with their elites because they know how to do it better. That's basically the only way I can make sense of socialism. So I'll hand it over to you. Okay.
I think it's self-evident that society is the organic culmination of lived experiences by anyone. And another thing that people like. There isn't just this elite class that is permanently at the top of society and stays there forever. This is constantly changing. And this can be seen in the meme that the socialists use, the porky capitalist meme. Who does that represent? What is it, Mark Zuckerberg? Elon Musk? Who are the wealthy industrialists with the top hats? And because as far as I can tell, they're all very, very left-wing people who seem to be, very concerned with social issues and progress, and these people have all come up during the age of the internet. it's just outmoded. And like you said, it's kind of conspiratorial to suggest that there's a shady group of elites that are planning the society. And the thing is, we even in the 80s, I think it was 1987, there was a journalist who managed to sneak into the Bilderberg group meetings. And you think, oh god, that's like an actual conspiracy that's happening. And he was really disappointed. And he wrote an article about it, in which he said, look, it's actually worse than you think. It's not that these people are controlling society. It's that society is a plane that's got no pilot. These people are desperately trying to hold on to what they've got because they don't have unlimited power. They're sat on top of this roiling ocean of power, of people coming up and going down, and it's totally unmanageable from their perspective. And all they're doing is desperately trying to hold on to what they've got. And so, yeah, no, society is absolutely the consequence of the individual interactions and machinations of millions and millions of people all acting independently in various networks of engagement. There's no central planning to society.
I've got nothing to add to that. That nailed it.
Okay, is there anything else to add, Agent or Sargon, on that point?
I think I'm done.
And you're done also, Agent?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so now I'm going to ask the socialist side the same question, which is human society the organic culmination of lived experience or rationally planned by its elites?
Right. So we do have a response to that question, but I would actually like to start by responding to one of your main points, if that's okay. So this very question of some kind of conspiracy. Now, one of the great things I do love about Marxism, one of the reasons I find it so appealing, is because actually it functions without having to rely on any conspiracies at all. It literally just makes observations about how the current system works. Because the thing is, for instance, when we talk about a bourgeois democracy, we don't mean that there's some secret sect of elite capitalists that are going to come in and completely overturn the election if it goes away they don't like. No. What we're talking about is the very way that society and the state today are structured is in a bourgeois frame, almost. There is no grand conspiracy here at all, but it's the way that questions that we have to deal with are framed. For instance, do we want to sell arms to dictatorships that knowingly fund terrorist organizations, or do we want to hurt the economy? Or do we want to raise the minimum wage, or do we want to help small business grow? Instead of, we can't actually solve these problems on that level, on this bourgeois mindset level. Instead, we need to look at why we live in a society, why we need to make these choices, and we have these dilemmas. And that reason is because we live in a class society where these classes have diametrically opposed economic interests. And this, as all class societies have done, will cause struggle to form and give rise to these problems. And it's, again, there is no conspiracy about the rich people controlling everything themselves. In fact, another great Marxist critique of capitalism is that the bourgeois often don't have control of the economy. The bourgeois are slaves to market forces. That's one of the problems. The whole society is slave to market forces. We want to change that. We want the economics to be a slave to us. Instead, it's the other way around today. But sorry, I just really had to deal with the conspiracy thing because that triggered me a little. But yeah, Marxism, it really doesn't deal in conspiracies. It deals in concrete observations that everyone can see is happening today. And while you may not agree with the conclusions, again, the observations that we start from are very much everyone can agree with. But anyways, in regard to the actual question, I think Finnish Bolshevik had a pretty good point he wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, so actually the kind of method of analyzing the world that Marx and Engels created is something they called historical and dialectical materialism, which is basically looking at concrete material realities and especially economic realities and seeing how those have led to society developing in a certain way. So, for instance, like how private property came about, how we came into having private property and then slavery, feudalism, and then the development of capitalism, and finally, like this modern capitalism that we have. So, we don't really disagree with you. Like when you ask, is human society culmination of lived experience? Well, it's the culmination of historical processes. It's not, nobody has planned this historical process. But when you talk about conspiracy, I don't know if it's really conspiratorial to say that there's people who have interest. You know, rich people have interests, countries have interests, and they pursue them. If the CIA assassinates a president in some country, is that a conspiracy? Well, technically yes, but is it an insane, loony theory to say like they have an economic interest to attack this country, so they do it? It's, you know, that's my take on that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in that regards, I feel like the way that question was posed was kind of actually just like society being a combination of organic human experience. That's actually what Marxism tries to explain at its most base level. I feel like because Marxism is just analyzing social relations, and that's all. So we're not trying to say that things are planned by economic masters or whatever. But anyway, Badmouse, is there anything you want to add?
Well, I was basically just going to ask. I was just going to say, sort of in line with what Finn just said. It's not conspiracy. It's just people acting in their exact interests, and that's what really defines how society goes. It's whether or not it acts in your interests or not. And I think that pretty much explains how human society functions. Really, those who have the power and those whose interests it lies in. Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
if we're sort of operating by the 5-minute rule, since the capitalists were less than 5 minutes, we might as well wrap it at there. So I'll ask the question. I will propose an open forum. I'll be more strict with regards to interruptions. I will warn first, and if you continue to interrupt someone's point, you will be temporarily muted until the point is over. So, is human society the organic culmination of lived experience or rationally planned by its elites? This is now an open forum. You have 15 minutes.
Okay, can I start? So I find it very interesting that you said we want economics to be a slave to us. That was
that might be a bit of a weird metaphor. I don't know.
No. I actually think
you jumped on me there.
No. I think I get what you're trying to say, and it's weird because I already view economics as being a slave to people. That's the whole point of it. There is no point to economics other than to serve people. So, to paraphrase Marx, I think Marx puts it really well. It's man creates his own history, but not as he sees fit. So, very much, economics and historical development, they are human-driven, but they're not, decided by humans, if that makes sense.
It's right, because it's too chaotic for anybody to be able to decide that.
Exactly. Markets are horrendously chaotic. They're anarchic.
Exactly, because the world in reality is horrendously chaotic.
Hang on a second. That's the point, isn't it? It's not... When you say markets, what it would be better to say is individual exchanges and transactions between people. Because that makes it far more real and far more concrete about what you're actually talking about when you say markets. And when you think about the number of people and the number of transactions that happen per day between all of these people, do you really think you're capable of controlling that?
I mean, I think you're
I feel like
okay, sorry.
I feel like this is just, again, I think you guys touched on this last time. It's the economic calculation problem, isn't it? That's what you're kind of getting at here, right?
Well, yeah, it's an irreducibly complex system.
Yeah, alright. So, economic calculation. So I don't really know where to begin because there are lots of things, but I guess a good place would be there's a beautiful PDF that I have again here, which actually explains how you can simulate and run an economy.
Okay, but we're in the middle of the debate, so you're going to have to explain it very quickly.
Yeah, I'm doing that now. It basically explains how you can simulate and run an economy and calculate things on a Dell computer, let alone the computers that we could actually establish now. I see that eyebrow raised, Sargon. I know you're
I'm also going to interject here. This is something. Hang on. This is something I raised to you earlier with regards to the sources that you're putting in the Google Hangout chat. The people watching this stream and the ones in retrospect won't be able to see that, so you'll have to.
I will. Yeah. Okay. So the title is economic planning hypercomputational? The argument from Cantor I can't say that word. Diagonal. There. Fuck. Sorry, I can't. But you'll find it if you Google it.
Diagonalization.
Yes, yeah, that's it.
What's your point that you're making? Sorry.
So basically, we can quite easily calculate these things, but furthermore, though, economic planning and central planning, that isn't even what socialism is. That's just the temporary transition phase between capitalism and socialism. Socialism, at risk of talking way too much here, I could just quote Marx to kind of explain how he puts it beautifully, that essentially, when you analyze the shifts between modes of productions in humanity, without any kind of actual proper human planning, or proper actual thinking about it, the distribution of goods in society essentially sorts itself out. And it's done that before capitalism, even when we're reducing for use instead of exchange like we are now, and it will do it after capitalism when we transition to socialism.
Seems like an argument against controlling the economy, to be honest.
Can I make a short point?
The thing is that controlling the economy isn't socialism. It's the transition from capitalism.
Yeah, but it's a necessary step on the road towards socialism, so it is a fundamental part of socialism.
Can I make a short
Even if
point?
eventually it becomes
yeah.
You can't separate that from socialism.
Yeah.
All right,
Well,
I know Bolshevik wanted to make a point there.
Yeah.
So-
I'll let him talk.
Sargon, when you say that these things cannot be societies, or I mean, I think you all pretty much said it, that society is too chaotic, you can't control these things. Like, I think you're making this kind of weird boogeyman out of this. How, like, you say it's just so complex, we can't possibly, it's beyond our comprehension. But I mean, not really. Like, there's all kinds of regulation and laws all the time. Like, you're basically saying that it's so complex that you shouldn't plan anything, or you shouldn't regulate anything, or like, of course not.
Okay. Wait, can I come in here a second?
Oh, God.
That's fine.
First of all, this idea that you can have a computer predict what the economy is going to do is bonkers. Like,
Well, the maths is there.
the idea that a Dell computer could figure out that there would be a booming World of Warcraft market in 10 years is insane. Can you listen to what you're saying?
That's not really what it's. That's not really
Can I
what it's
just-
about.
can I
though.
just
Let
respond to
Adrian
that
finish.
point,
No,
Adrian?
let Adrian
Okay,
finish.
after he's done. Yeah.
So
After that, Badmouse.
So that was the first thing. The second thing was about this thing about things being chaotic and very difficult to control. I mean, the best explanation I've ever seen, you guys must have all seen it, is the pencil. Like the thousands of people it took to make just the simple pencil, all of the many processes, all of the people following their own interests. Imagine trying to design all of that from the ground up, and then calculating exactly how much. It's very, very difficult to do all of those things.
I mean, they made pencils in the Soviet Union, to be honest.
But wait.
That point you just brought up. That
They-
point you just brought up is what I'm referring to with
They-
calculating.
I've just muted the
Okay.
Xexizy.
I need to explain this though. Yes, they were able to do it in the Soviet Union because it had already been done, so they could copy it.
They invented plenty of new things too, though.
Hold on a second. Every single society from that time, from that kind of wave of socialism, they all basically got frozen in the 1950s. When the Berlin Wall came down, why was East Germany basically like a time warp back to literally the end of the Second World War? And why was West Germany, a modern country?
Not really. I mean, you could ask, like, why
even
are African
even
countries
now-
so
Hang
much
on,
behind?
Adrian, I think you are sort of rambling a little bit, so I'll let
I
you.
think you've made your point.
All right.
You've made your point, so I'll let Badmouse retort to that. Xexizy, you can also mute yourself.
Thank you.
I did just want to sort of talk in regards to that pencil thing you brought up. It actually is a perfect example of how capitalism in itself cannot be ethical. Because in order to have all of those markets operating like that, okay, you are going to actually need in yourself a grand benevolent dictator to figure out how that is all going to work around. Okay, because you've got all these industries working in different ways in different parts of the world. Okay, using different types of methods to accumulate their goals. Okay, and for that matter, I cannot see in that reason why capitalism can be ethical. Because you cannot moderate exactly how that's going to happen. And just quickly, I also just want to say in regards to how you can predict the future, I ask a question, why is it that under capitalism, billions and billions of people are being kept out of the ability to innovate in the first place? Because that's basically what you have with a large underclass of people working for bosses.
Okay, can I take this?
I just want to say one sentence before we get off topic too much.
Let's
hang on.
Sargon first. Let's Sargon go.
Okay.
For a start, I am not going to accept what a communist considers to be ethical, because your ethical framework changes on your ideology. So when you say you don't consider it ethical, that's actually a non-argument, and I just don't care about your opinion on what you think is ethical. So I don't think we should go down that road at all.
Okay, Bantu, I know you wanted to say something as well, and then I'll refer back to Xexizy.
Okay, I just want to grab a couple of points here. Sort of lost my train of thought there for a second because Sargon went away. I didn't think he was going.
Yeah, so I'm sorry. My first love is moralizing, and no, we're not talking morals and ethics with communism.
Read Stunner.
Ethics of spooks.
One thing that I wanted to bring up that I thought was interesting that was mentioned earlier was how the interests of the bourgeois and the proletariat are in conflict. Okay, and I think that that's a point that gets greatly exaggerated. Okay, I think that often the time they're absolutely in cooperation with each other. Okay, and this does play into the point now. I remember what I was going to say. This actually all fits together. So, let me ask you guys for a second here. Okay, why do you think that the interests of my employees are different than my own?
Because they have an interest of getting as much money out of their labor as possible, and you have an interest of keeping it for yourself to accumulate profit and capital.
Yeah, and you're absolutely wrong. Okay, because you're not actually understanding my interests at all. My interests are to retain the best employees that I possibly can, okay, so that I can grow my business as effectively as possible. Okay, my first interest isn't profit. My first interest is making sure that I build a robust organization that's capable of bringing value to clients. To do that, I have to spend the appropriate amount of money that the market dictates, okay, to get the best people that I can to do the job. Now, these people have an interest... Pardon?
Sorry, if you don't make profit, though, you'll go out of business, so it's not like what you want to do.
Hang on, let Bantu finish his point, and then you can retort.
Okay, no, he's absolutely right. I have to make a profit, but that profit is made via the efforts of the people that I put in place in the structure of the business that I create. Okay, at the end of the day, there is so much value for a particular set of labor within a market. I try to pay as much as I can to get the best people that I can to do it. Okay, like all my employees are extremely well remunerated. I think if you went around and asked them, they'll turn around and they're going to say, no, actually, we really like working for him because he looks after us.
To be honest, this is pretty anecdotal. Like, you could say, I take good care of my slaves, therefore slavery is okay. Like, this is pretty anecdotal stuff.
Yeah, it's not anecdotal. It's the basis of how business is run. When you run one day, maybe you'll understand that.
Oh, I knew that was coming. I knew that was coming.
Hang on.
Well, you think experience doesn't matter?
Oh, I think your own personal experience. The argument is a bit much, but yeah. Sorry, I've still been itching to get this one sentence off. Sorry,
it's actually one question. Hold on, I got.
Hey, whoa! Hey, let me finish. Active occasion. When you were talking about that pencil, that's the type of stuff I was referring to with that Dell computer calculation stuff. Anyway, finish, Olshvik. I think you had a good point you wanted to raise in regards to Bantu, so I'll let you go ahead there.
Actually, can I just jump in quickly? The pencil thing is bizarre because at what point do you account for the sales of pencils in your calculation?
I mean, you don't sell them because there aren't markets.
Yeah, but there are markets, and we sell pencils. So,
under the central planning.
Yeah, but
you can't plan a market.
Get issued one pencil or something?
Well, sorry?
Does everyone just get issued a pencil by the Dell Pro computer?
No, it's just, the concept
of get the pencils?
Where does it come into... Okay, well, I guess that goes into the whole labor voucher thing. I mean, assuming, like, pencils that can be made in abundance, which they probably could be.
Yeah, let's just assume there are loads of pencils.
We could give everybody as many pencils as they wanted. But if pencils couldn't be made in abundance, then we'd have to get people to buy them with labor vouchers.
Yeah, but assuming that they can, how do you know who gets a pencil and who doesn't?
Because some people spend their labor vouchers on them and some others don't.
But how is this different from money?
Yeah,
because labor vouchers don't circulate, they're not a currency, and they do not accumulate. And
but there's
furthermore, they're not wages.
Demand involved there, isn't there?
How is there supply and demand?
Yeah, to some degree, but it's not a market. The markets aren't just supply and demand. Markets are commodity exchange.
How does it deal with game changers like the iPad coming in, or do they just not get invented?
How does innovation happen under that system?
Yeah, this is my exact question.
All right, so... If you look at, like, you can look historical socialist countries if you want. Like, they invented things like, Sputnik, stuff like that. Like, all kinds of technological innovations were made, and they had state scientists building all kinds of things. But if you want to make it, like, say, less state-run or whatnot, you could just have, like, there is a you get a level of education for free provided, and then you have facilities that you can use to try to come up with things, and then if you make an invention,
So how does
Here's the thing, though. Like, yeah,
2-minute warning, by the way, guys. 2-minute warning.
Basically, what FinBol was saying is that people are always going to want to innovate things. We've innovated things before capitalism. It's just, it's dare I say it, human nature to want to innovate things.
Yeah, but it actually
people
helps.
naturally want to fulfill their passions and then try and follow those things and contribute something to the world.
It actually
and there's
helps.
much more to contributing innovations than just money. There's Badmouse, you
lots of reasons. I don't deny that. I don't think any of us do.
Let Badmouse go.
It's just simply the fact that in a capitalist system, you are systemically depriving loads and loads of people from the ability to innovate in the first
Exactly.
place, by depriving them of their ability to innovate.
How many Einsteins do you think never picked up?
That's tautological.
Absolutely.
The reason it happened.
How?
This is okay. Can I just jump in on this?
Let Bantu and then Sargon.
So the problem that I'm seeing here is twofold. You're talking about innovation still happens. That's great, but the problem isn't innovation. Innovation is going to happen because you have people that are creative people that go out there and they take joy in doing that and they take pride from it. No one disputes that. The problem is how do you then market that technology? I can invent penicillin. Hold on, I'm speaking. There's market. I can create penicillin. I can invent penicillin, right? But then I've got to create a factory, I've got to create a fabrication process, I've got to create a supply chain, a distribution network, I've got to come up with a whole way of getting that out to the market, and I've got to take a risk to do that.
Sorry, so
okay?
the guy who
I have
invented
to appeal to some,
penicillin, he did all of that.
What, sorry?
So the guy who invented penicillin did all of that? Because he did.
No,
of course he didn't. So what are you talking about?
He didn't build. Did he build
There
a
was a
factory?
pre-existing chain made to get these innovations out to people.
Yeah.
And how did that get to us?
Like think
How
about
did that factory come from?
well, think about like there are
Marcus
ways
Because people
other than
got
profit.
capital, made an investment, and took a risk so that they could produce something.
No, but
Okay.
think about it. Like this, when Kalashnikov came up with his famous gun, the Soviet government somehow just got those guns to people.
The time
like, it
is
wasn't
up,
a
by the
problem.
way, so I'll just let you guys sort of finish up this sort of question, then we'll move forward.
I
because
would like to
the
make
government made a choice to do that. But the point is that in a capitalist society, I can get together with a group of individuals, come up with an idea. We can pool our resources, our efforts, our money, and then we can put it out into the market and hope that it works. Because we believe that if this existed, people would want it. Okay? That's how innovation happens, is that we identify something that we see as a potential need, we build it, we take a risk, we put it out there, and then either it sells or it doesn't. And if it works, we make a profit, and yay, good for us. And if it doesn't, we take a bath and we lose our money.
Can I respond to that?
So, is there anyone else that wants any final statements as well as Bantu?
I want
FinBol does.
to say something as well.
Finn and Agent, so no one else? Okay.
I do.
So,
I think Badmouse as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Badmouse, if you want to go first then.
Oh, okay. Well, mine was in basically response to Rhino again. So, when you say, that your idea is to create the best staff, the best, working thing for business, correct? Okay, that's great. That means that if someone's not working as good, is not efficient, then you must either discipline them. If they don't, then you must fire them, and you must hire someone else. If that person can't find a job, he's going to go hungry. Now, I know that you're in favour of social safety nets, but that's dependent upon booms and busts, okay? And if it's not going well, as we saw in the 70s and 80s and so forth, then capitalism has to cut corners, otherwise it's going to collapse. And also I'd like to ask, well, it's not a response period, but risk I do not believe is a good, justification for capitalism, frankly.
Okay,
no.
Agent,
You can
Agent
believe that
and
if you want, but you have
then
to tell
we'll
me
move
why.
on. No, Bantu,
much
let
hungry in
Agent go.
socialist countries.
No, just let Agent go, otherwise I'll start me.
It's very hard for me to understand why you'd bring up innovation in this debate. I mean, if you just look at the stretch of history, we went from years of feudalism, peasants, poverty, horrible, if you look at the stretch of history from the decline of the Roman Empire until about, 1840 or something, it's just brutally miserable. Read Fernand Braudel, he's a great Marxist historian for you. You'll see that in the longue durée, nothing changes for the poor, okay? Under capitalism, there's a reason that the Industrial Revolution happened here in the UK, and not in some other country, right? There's a reason why in exactly these same countries we had basically every single major invention and innovation that you can think of. They all happened here. The technology that we're speaking on right now was developed from this system, not some other system. It was this one. So you're literally all there trying to replace the best thing that human beings have ever come up with something that has no proof at all. So we have basically every single piece of empirical evidence on our side. So I don't understand how you'd bring that up as a point in your favor.
All right. Bolshevik, you can make your statement and then we'll move on.
All right. So, let's see. The risk thing first. So, you said you invent something, you take a risk, you see if it's a good enough product to sell. Well, I mean, whether it sells or not that's not always an objective metric of if it's good or not, but there's other things that can impact it, like advertising and stuff like that. But we don't deny that, like, even in a planned system, there's always risks. Like you fund a program to develop, let's say, a new tractor. If the tractor doesn't turn out to be a good one, then you make losses and then you gotta try again. Like, of course there's risks.
That's right. But in a capitalist system,
Bantu,
you're going to have 20 times.
All right, I've just got to mute you for a sec. I just want Bolshevik to finish his point and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, in capitalism, the companies, they go bankrupt, and then people lose their jobs, and there's a lot more chaos and waste and stuff like that. However, if, let's see, what was it that academic agent said, that there's a reason why things happened in the UK and in capitalism. Like, yeah, we know the UK was the biggest colonial empire, so they had the resources, and then we had the necessary scientific developments for capitalism, so capitalism was created. They industrialized society. We know this, that classic capitalism industrialized, they had industrial revolution, but the Industrial Revolution was a very violent and bloody time with tons of misery and all kinds of horrible shit, so it wasn't a, it wasn't very nice, and it wasn't efficient either. Let's see.
Workers' wages did go up 90% during that period.
Okay, hang on, Justin.
Let's see, what else did you make another point besides just, innovation?
I'm going to say, in interest of fairness, because I know Xexizy, Sargon, and Bantu all want to say something. You can unmute yourself, by the way, Bantu, now. I'll let you finish your point, and then I know Sargon, Bantu, and Xexizy wanted to add something, so we'll go in that order.
Yeah, I'm just going to say that I think it's kind of baseless to say that capitalism has made all the innovations, because it really hasn't. Like, he's just claiming that. Even the internet, like, the internet wasn't, well, whatever, we don't need to get into that.
Yeah, no,
okay, let's Sargon, then Bantu, and then Xexizy can finish us off. So, Sargon?
Yeah, I actually agree that the argument, capitalism invented X and therefore is a bit of a red herring, really. Eventually, socialism probably would invent the same things, but the word is eventually. And I find it highly ironic that Badmouse brought up the fact that some people in capitalist societies go hungry, whereas most people in socialist societies go hungry. That's just the way that this has always been and always will be, apparently. And so I find that a very ironic thing to bring up.
All right, Bantu.
Okay, yeah. So when it comes to the concepts of innovation, you said that there's risk in a socialist society where, if we choose to develop a bad tractor, we've had a bad tractor. And this is the point of capitalism, is right there, is there's going to be 20 different competitors creating a tractor. So if one of them makes a bad tractor, it doesn't leave everyone stuck driving bad tractors.
You can have 20 different scientists make prototypes.
Don't interrupt in Bolshevik. Just let Bantu finish.
Okay. So you're going to have choice. You're going to have options. Okay, and the other thing is, and this is to sort of play off of Sargon's point, because he's right, he's absolutely right. Socialist countries eventually will get to these things, but the reason that capitalist societies do it better is that a whole bunch of people are competing to innovate and then letting the people decide what works. This is why BlackBerry ended up dying and iPhones took over, because a new invention came to market that replaced the old concept. In a socialist society, I come up with my innovation and I go to the Minister of Innovation and I say, hey, I want to make this. Can you apportion some factory space for me? Okay, and he goes, I don't think so. We don't have enough room for you, sorry.
Okay.
So you limit the amount of innovation that you purposefully limit the amount of innovation that can happen in a society. And as a result, that's why you end up with stagnation.
Okay. I'm just going to... Are you finished now?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm just going to let Xexizy briefly do his point, and then we'll move on, because we've been on this question for a while.
Cool. Just before, really quickly, as we're about halfway through the questions and stuff, would it be okay if after we do this question, we take about a 5-minute break, just like refill water, like, whatever else?
Yeah,
Because
that
I
sounds
will brilliant. Okay, well, I will go through with my with my thing then. So Sargon, in regards to socialist starving and stuff, the reason, I mean, if we just assume, I won't get into for the moment were they or were they not socialist. All I'll say is that had they had the ability to feed these people, they would have. The thing is, under capitalism, is that we do have the ability to feed everybody several times over, and we don't. So that's probably one of our biggest complaints with it there. So we say if we're living in such a society where we can feed everybody, we can house everybody, but we don't, and surely we need to look at what the fuck is going on with our society.
Yeah, but
okay, no, Sargon, no. I did say there could be no more interjections now.
Industrialization and wages. Yeah, wages went up, living standards went up, of course. But of course, wages on their own aren't a great indicator, because wages for production workers in China have gone up, but now they're also killing themselves because of their mind-numbing work. So that's not the only thing you can base it off of. And in regards to industrialization, yeah, Marxists are totally aware that capitalism industrializes things. It's part of that dialectical materialism where, you go from feudalism, capitalism industrializes things, creates the base for socialism, and that's when socialism comes about. In fact, that's one of the reasons Russia had so many problems, because it didn't have that industrial base that socialism needs. But anyway, and then lastly, this whole competition thing, the way I see it, competition is, and I think you kind of made my point when you say, we'll create 20 tractors each. Competition is really just throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks. Instead, what planning is just, getting together and cooperating to figure out what works and then improving it from there. Instead of having 20 different innovators working on tractors, how about we get 20 different innovators to work on the same tractor and cooperate together and have a much more direct response to improve it as time goes on.
And
Okay.
Market mechanisms in between.
Really like to
but anyway,
move on
that is, I'm done.
I would move on here. So I am going to ask the third question. I'm going to start with the socialists. I'm going to be briefly AFK once I've asked this question.
Are we taking that 5-minute break?
Should we take the time to get a drink and whatnot for?
Shall we now? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to now. Yeah.
27 minutes, and we'll come back.
Brilliant. Okay. Cool.
5.
I'll see you guys in a sec.
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, man. This has been fun so far.
Alright, I'm back. I'm going to keep chat entertained, actually. I'm going to see if I can talk to chat. I've got to refresh the page because it's far behind on my screen. Corner break. Rome or Carthage? Rome. Rome till the day I die.
While we're on the break, can I just say something quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
I gotta respond to that point about why not get 20 guys to make one tractor. Because
I think let's just sort of leave the sort of ideological discussion to the conversation. You can bring that up a little bit later, because I think that's pertinent to the third question.
What's the third question again?
Has socialism ever worked? Can it? So that will be the third question.
Right, okay.
I asked, so we will cover that. But Just have a look what else is going on. A lot of either pro-commie or anti-commie stuff.
How many people are watching?
4,337.
Oh, Jesus.
What kind of a time limit do we have? Like, how much time do we have left?
Ideally, I'd sort of like, I mean, people have said a maximum of 10 minutes, but I'd like to keep it for 5 minutes and we're sort of doing the general statement. And then I think 15 minutes works quite well for the open forum. I think we'll probably be here for about maybe 2 hours, I'd say. 2 more hours, hopefully. But,
All right.
And then after that, we'll sort of just wrap up. I mean, the way I've sort of geared it is that the socialists, when they open the question, they the capitalists will get the final say, and vice versa. So when the capitalists open, Xexizy and the socialists will get the final say. And then I'll probably do some final thoughts afterwards. I'll allow the capitalists, I'll allow the socialists to go last on the final thought section, and then we'll probably end it.
All right, I'm here.
You guys aren't shit talking me too bad, are you?
No.
Not at all.
Chat is going really fucking fast.
Oh yeah, the chat is mental.
What chat?
Sargon's chat.
Krasny, my good friend Krasny's in the chat. One of my biggest fans, but he seems alright.
There are so many helicopters in that chat. It's unreal.
Yeah.
Hey, Sargon. No, Sargon.
He's muted, I think.
I was gonna go for the shameless plug and get him to link our channels in the descriptions, but
I would protest that, but I'd get a mutual benefit out of it.
yeah, there's no reason not to.
I think I'll probably edit them at the end, I guess.
Fair enough.
No point doing it now.
Xexizy, are you streaming this?
No, I would, but I didn't want to risk fucking my internet, so... Oh, fuck, I forgot to record it. Ah, fuck, I'll just download it off of...
just download it off YouTube afterwards,
Yeah.
I think that's fine.
I did intend to record it, but... Damn, Marxists aren't competent for anything.
Yeah, I'm recording it so that I can remove some of the background
brilliant.
noise in post.
Oh, nice.
For those of you that are just joining us, we're on a break at the moment. We've answered 2 out of the 5 questions. This is probably the best time to take the break, about sort of 40% of the way there, just so we can properly sort of go to the toilet, get drinks and things like that, and then we can push on through the last 60%. Relatively easily, but
I think the next few questions will go a bit faster, because I think we're kind of getting a better feel for the format.
yeah, and also, I don't know, I thought that last question was a bit of a, how do you observe the chat? I'll link you the chat. It is very, very fast at the moment, and
Yeah, you're not going to be able to read anything.
a lot of it is just needs to be
It's going to be a blur.
Yeah.
A blur of text. Text tornado. A text
Yeah, right.
Badmouse, are you back? I see you unmuted.
Yes, I'm back. Yeah.
Alright, so we're just waiting on Daddy Sargon.
Go on.
I'm enjoying that
I refuse to call him that, I'm sorry.
there's like a corn meme. I've noticed this in this chat.
Oh yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
I remember.
Oh,
I like
hey,
the chat in screen.
FinBol, isn't there a corn meme to do with Khrushchev?
Oh, Khrushchev corn meme, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a great.
I just saw him
chats are
capitalism
great.
for hentai in the chat. That was amazing.
Wait, what?
Yeah, Sargon's chats are great for me, because I remember when I was on in the British election stream, like people were making memes of how fox hunting me and bringing in.
Wow.
Something, isn't it?
Full communism.
I see a lot of corn.
There's so much corn.
There's so much corn. See, there's no shortage of corn.
It's like the Stephen King movie, Children of the Corn.
You know what they say we can stimulate an economy on a Dell computer? I meant that literally. This is how we're going to get our corn.
Or even, if any of you play Castle Crashers, there's a boss in the game which is literally just a massive mutant corn cob.
Ah, you mean the prequel to Angry Birds?
No. Castle Crashers is like a side-scrolling beaten that game. It's made by the same people who did Alien Hominid, Pit People.
Oh, wait.
And,
What you mean, Luke, is Crush the Castle.
yeah. I'll tell you what, I fucking hate Angry Birds. You know, it ripped off Crush the Castle. I'm surprised they haven't sued.
Yeah.
I'm seeing comments made by the Austrian Leninist, but he's going
Austrian Leninist.
Austrian Leninist, but he's going by so fast that I can not read them.
Well, man, I love like meme ideologies, like anarcho-fascism is just beautiful. Or I've seen National Trotskyism recently. That's an interesting one.
My gosh.
Did you say anarcho-fascism was like? I mean, there is like.
Hang on, I would sort of, with the sort of ideological talk, I'd like to sort of keep it to the actual sort of conversation itself, just in case we don't get into arguments during the break.
No, I'm just saying that there are like national anarchists, like racist anarchists.
Oh yeah.
Christopher Cantwell.
There's this one guy always in my comments who's like this crazy anti-Semite Bakunin supporter.
Is that the guy with the clover in his...
Yeah, the Irish guy, yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, yeah.
I saw some pencils as well, so it's very exciting watching this.
I just love what the chat, like, the smallest things they'll take out and just run with it.
Nastrot gang.
You know what, one thing that I've noticed that's different, because I know a few people sort of saw this and they're like, oh, it's going to be like Sargon's conversation with Christy Winters. This has just been a lot... I much prefer these sort of debates that are a lot more sort of friendly and down to earth as opposed to be strictly formalised, because for starters, I can moderate any of those shit. You know, this is not the first chat, stream that I've ever moderated in general. But
I think we found like a good balance between like general discussion and actually a debate format.
I think so. I think it's been pretty effective so far.
So yeah, but just
no one's told anyone to fuck off yet, so it's good.
Yeah.
Sargon's taking quite a while.
Yeah, what's he up to?
He probably thought it was 20 minutes until 5.
Oh god.
Because someone said 20, and I was like,
no, I said we come back at 20 past. 27 past. Oh dear, that doomed us all.
So we're just really buying time and trying to entertain the chat. It's like when you have a sort of a baby sort of thrust upon you, and you've sort of got to try and find ways to entertain it. So you've got to jangle the keys and stuff. Hopefully, keep them entertained for a couple of minutes. If you want to,
Bravo.
I'll give the chat something to do while they're waiting. This is a fun little game or mind trick that you can pull on. Mindfuck, if you will, that you can put on yourself is try not to think about penguins. You will inevitably think about penguins.
Isn't that like you just lost the game?
Essentially, yeah.
Oh shit! Like, I just lost the fuck. I was going well on that. I had gone years without losing the game. Oh god, sorry. My 13-year-old meme self is re-embodying me for some reason.
Yeah, I think like a lot of the chat is probably fucking cringing at all of us right now, but this is
I don't know.
This is the circumstances we're in. You know what? Why don't we? While Sargon is gone,
there's a lot of.
I know everyone here except Bantu has channels. Oh, well, you have a Twitter as well, don't you, Bantu? So if you want, I could go left to right. We could shill.
Oh yeah,
we can shill. No, I don't really care. I'm not interested in being a personality. I'm just happy.
What do you want to do?
Do you want to, share your YouTube or your social media or anything like that?
Oh, well, I think everybody knows me. I'm a neat laughing as a revolutionary.
I mean, everyone knows Sargon anyway. He's not even here. So, Adrian, do you want to show?
Well, I have a channel called The Academic Agent, which I recommend that you subscribe to. How about that? I guess I talk about what do I talk about? Like why capitalism is good. What else do I mean? What else do I talk about? I mean, I have a little interview series where I talk about the culture wars.
Honestly, Xexizy, I think especially the people that are sort of on the socialist side of the debate should probably join that, because me and Sargon have already been on that and discussed our views on that. So
okay.
So he's looking for more sort of...
I'm on summer now. I've just got to get through 1 week of work, and then I'm done. So, yeah, if you just like, hit me up at some point.
Finished? Do you have anything to show?
I mean, I have the YouTube channel, and that's pretty much it. Like, yeah, the Finnish Bolshevik YouTube channel.
Okay, Xexizy.
Well, yeah, I mean, my name is really fucking weird to pronounce and spell. If you just go in the description, it's the top one. Go on there. Got a bunch of stuff about communism. If you leave a comment asking questions, and it's not just calling me a cuck, I'll likely respond to you and educate you.
You're just tempting it now. You're tempting fate.
Yeah. But yeah, I got loads of stuff teaching kiddies on socialism, so go check it out.
And then me, I'm sort of a radical out-centrist, as the cool kids like to call it, but I'm sort of someone that considers themselves fairly balanced in their political opinions. I usually host streams on my YouTube channel, which is where I host people from all kinds of views. Yesterday I had Raving Ruin, who was formerly known as Edgy Sphinx, on my channel.
I've been on his stream, by the way. I highly recommend it. Go check it out.
It was a really good stream.
That was a fun one,
we were talking about cultural libertarianism and a few things like that. But yeah, and my Twitter is @FoxFromTheWest as well. I post a lot.
Well, that was good timing.
I do like.
Yeah, that's good timing. You came back just as I was chilling, even though everyone else fucking chilled.
I just want to say hi, that guy T. You fucking cuck. Yeah, he's a cuck. So
See, I'm very interested in anarcho-fascism, and I'd like to know more.
we got to do that at some point.
Is everyone here? You're the only one that hasn't seen the mic move. Finish.
Sorry, what?
He is here.
Oh, okay. Everyone's here. So, okay, we will get back to the topic at hand. So, I believe it was the socialists that were going to be asked the question first, and the question is: Has socialism ever worked, and can it? You have a maximum of 10 minutes on this topic. Go.
Right, just before we get into this is where our ideological divides really come into play, because one of the main reasons there are like 50 different types of socialism is because we all have slightly different ideas on what specifically socialism is. So we can describe them ourselves if you'd like, but really it probably just makes a lot more sense if we go with a more basic, less nuanced definition that isn't really going to make too much of a difference for the purposes of this debate anyway. And personally, and guys, call me out if you disagree with me here, I would say socialism is, one, the abolition of production for exchange and commodity production, two, worker ownership of the means of production democratically and collectively, and three, Badmouse, you may disagree with me a bit here, worker control of the state apparatus, that being the media, the police force, although the police force would be kind of turned into something else, and it's just a worker state, essentially, with a dictatorship of the proletariat, as well as called, and we can go into what exactly that means and how it's different from a normal state in a minute. But, guys, do you want to give any nuances to do with your own specific ideologies here?
I'll have a go if you want. Unless
Sure.
Finish wants to go first.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Well, I just say in terms of what we're talking about, whether socialism works or not. So a lot of people sort of today, believe capitalism works because it produces things. It produces the things that people can buy and so forth. Okay, and we base this upon the idea that the quality of life is basically upon how much material possessions you have and so forth. Okay, what I consider to be something that can actually actualize our freedoms is not money. Okay, it's things like healthcare, things like education, a house, despite so many being available, reducing the amount of hours we have so that we can have more leisure time. What freedom is now, the ability for someone to own 100 houses if they want to and never actually live in them. I don't consider it freedom if people are starving and dying when we already have enough resources. And arguably, I have to concede at times, is that what socialism aims to do in many of these countries that people, Xexizy and Finn, support and so forth, I have to admit, at least, that they did manage to bring a lot of this into the hands of the people at the end of the day. I think you have to concede that fundamentally. And if you look at other countries in those areas, that run on capitalism, those areas, the rich keep the money and the poor starve. And you can't just simply look at capitalism singly or nationally like we do in the West. You have to look at it globally. That's what I have to say.
Finn?
Yeah, so, does socialism work or can it work? Was there also a question about has it existed?
Has socialism worked, I think kind of implies has it existed.
Yeah, so, to me, I would define socialism, the classic Marxist definition of socialism is collective ownership of the means of production. Means of production are basically industries, enterprises, land, stuff like that. So the places where people work, those are considered means of production. Railroads, also like big infrastructure and stuff like that. So you can look at examples like countries like the Soviet Union, China, and the Eastern European countries, Cuba and whatnot. Did they work? Well, you have to define what you mean by work, but were they, the Soviet Union was the second biggest economy, second biggest military as well, so it's kind of weird to say, oh, socialism just is unworkable. Clearly not. It functioned. It functioned pretty well. It was the second biggest world power, whereas Russia before socialism was not. It wasn't even a main player. Now, did they have problems? Sure. And I think it was before we went live, that Academic Agent said he was interested in talking about Khrushchev and like those like later Soviet era things, but sure, they had lots of problems, and I think they went into totally wrong directions later on. But it functioned pretty well. One last thing. The thing that people say, or that people fail to do, is they compare. Let's compare the Soviet Union to the United States, for example. The United States was a wealthy industrial country for much longer than the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union essentially industrialized in the 1930s in about 20 years. Or a country like Albania. Albania had its industrial revolution in the 1950s. Not the 1850s, not the 1750s, the 1950s. So, of course, they're going to be a bit behind in tech and in production capability and stuff. But this is not the result of socialism. It might be the reason why their government fell and why the socialists took over. Or if you look at, there's a reason why so many socialist countries, in fact, all the socialist countries were colonies, third world countries, poor countries. Vietnam, Cuba, Burkina Faso, Albania. They were not rich countries before socialism. No, they were very poor. And that probably facilitated the revolution. But people usually forget this historical context. They think that it's the socialism that caused the poverty.
So basically, I just want to really say quickly, I think the biggest difference between mine and FinBol's kind of perception of socialism is I'd probably take a slightly more libertarian stance in that Finnish Bolshevik believes that if the state owns the means of production, but it's a worker-controlled state, then the workers control the means of production through the state. Personally, I don't agree with that. I believe that it needs to be the workers themselves. But that's a small disagreement between us.
Well, we don't really have to necessarily go into that, but I will say
that... Yeah, we're not going to go into that. I just wanted to say that's kind of so personally, I don't consider the USSR and China to be socialist, but he does, but that's just a small difference between us. But to go back to so now we got that out of the way, to go back to the actual question, this won't take long. Talking about...
Hold on. Before you go, I just want to make the clarification that in the Soviet Union and in China, since most people were collective farmers, they actually didn't work for the state. So, it wasn't even...
Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So, to go back to how socialism worked and can it work, there are numerous examples. I already know what the response is going to be, so I'm just... but there are numerous examples of socialism, what I'm... I can see Sargon laughing as well. There are numerous examples of socialism as what I've described it, with the worker ownership of the means of production and the worker control of the state existing and creating prosperous societies and working without corruption and going well. And these examples include the Paris Commune, Catalonia, German and Hungary communes in 1918 and 1919, and there are a few others. Hey, mute your fucking mic.
Hang on.
So basically, and then of course, so the typical result of this is then, but they only lasted a few months, or in Catalonia it lasted a few years before they were crushed by outside forces. What we're talking about here is the internal workings of the system itself. We're not talking about how it can defend itself, although that is admittedly a very good point. And one of the things that socialists need to do, and we are doing, is looking at these examples and thinking, why did they fall? in Paris, for example, it's because they allowed the capitalists who they had expropriated the property from, they allowed them to keep taking loans out of the bank, build up an army, and then come in and commence the Bloody Week, which just massacred everybody in the city, regardless of whether they were involved in the revolution or not. And the thing is, it's not like a socialist revolution has never been able to secure itself, because even though I don't think the USSR was socialism, I do think it was a socialist revolution, and it did manage to secure itself. So clearly, whatever they're doing is something that we should look to in regards to how does a socialist society defend itself and secure itself in a revolution against fascism, which is obviously a very important question. But I don't think the question is, can socialism defend itself? I think the question is, can socialism as a system on its own work? And I think historically it's been proven that it can. Is there anything you guys want to add to that?
Badmouse or finish? We'll just sort of wrap it up here, maybe.
Yeah.
A friend of mine from Russia just wanted me to say that he wanted me to say that capitalism destroyed his country, and that's all.
Okay, Badmouse?
Yeah, the birth rate actually decreased 10 years after the Soviet Union collapsed, let's say. And it's just also, when you're talking about this, I do just relate back to, is it going to serve the people who are, the poorest of people, or is it going to serve the rich? Is it going to put more power into it so that now we have a system where 8 people have more money than half the population of the world? So I think you really need to look at the death counts of capitalism and stuff like that. Have a good look at yourself on that regard, and not just simply go and look at every single flaw that socialism has ever done, considering the situations they were in to begin with.
Okay,
Venezuela is not socialist.
Okay then, so I will now ask the capitalist side the same question. Has socialism ever worked, and can it? And I believe, Bantu, you wanted to open on this one.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think we're asking the wrong question here, because I think it's pretty obvious that socialism can work. It has worked. The USSR did function. China works. East Germany worked. There's lots of examples of that it can work. But the question is, it has to prove itself as a superior and preferable system to the other options. Okay, and you have to look at this historically and go, over the course of history, what has worked best? Okay, and time again, you've got capitalism showing its superiority in this regard. Over and over and over and over and over again. There's no competition. Every socialist nation in history has survived to some degree, but it's had lots of misery, low standards of living, relatively speaking, to any capitalist country. It hasn't innovated. I mean, and that's because of structurally what it is. To go back to something that I was going to mention before, because we mentioned that this would segue into this point, Xexizy mentioned earlier, wouldn't it make more sense to have 20 guys working on, one tractor rather than having 20 tractors? And the answer is resoundingly no. Because these 20 guys can still make a mistake and produce a product that's substandard. I mean, there was a requisition going on for new fighter planes in Canada, and this was designed by Lockheed Martin. They had an unlimited amount of resources to throw into the design of these planes. And then once it was done and being tested, everyone looked at it and went, oh, geez, well, it's not good enough. It doesn't work. And this was with way more than 20 scientists and 20 innovators. Okay, so the point is that when you work within the capitalist system, it essentially works better than the socialist system. So it's not, does socialism work? Well, sure it does. Absolutely it does. And where do we need socialism in order to counter the things that it's specifically used for? Because you talk about taking care of the poor. You say there's this overproduction of goods. And as a result of this overproduction of goods, you have all these other poor people that are starving. Well, with a mixed type economy, when we've got social safety nets in place, okay, there's nothing in a capitalist society that cannot provide for the poor there. Okay, there's nothing that's exclusive to socialism that no other system can do. So I don't understand why that's even a point.
Can I
Please, go ahead.
A few points here? Right, okay, so I have a lot to address here, and I'll try and make it quick. Saying that the Soviet Union functioned is remarkably low standards, in my opinion. If you are going to be an empire of, 500 million? Probably something like that. To say that you are functioning...
Like half of that, but go ahead.
Oh, sorry, 250 million. But it doesn't matter the number, right? It doesn't matter the number. The fact that it's functioning is incredibly low standards, given how the capitalist West was thriving, booming in comparison, right? I mean, Badmouse was saying, look, I think we need to worry about material things like houses and healthcare and things like this. People are starving and dying. No, they're not. Okay, they're actually not. If you look at the numbers, I mean, we have fat, poor people with iPhones in the capitalist West. In the Soviet Union, they had breadlines. In Venezuela at the moment, they're on the verge of a civil war, and the average person in Venezuela is 19 pounds of weight because they're going hungry, right? The last 15 years, global poverty has halved because of capitalism. China now has a burgeoning middle class that's bringing democracy to China because they can demand it. That's what happens when you get a healthy bourgeoisie, right? Longevity, quality of life, access to luxury, all of these things have gone up under capitalism. You say, oh, well, 8 people control half the world's wealth. Okay, I'm just going to assume that at face value. Okay. You know, there's still no doubt that capitalism is bringing people out of not only poverty, but, like, absolute impoverishment. You know, this is happening. The material status of these people is improving, and it's doing it constantly. And like, every metric of life is going up under capitalism. And so I know someone's going to say, yeah, but what about literacy rates? We have 99% literacy rates too. Our hospitals are better. Everything about capitalist societies is better, right? And then you get Xexizy going, well, okay, but I mean, not every socialist experiment has to actually die. It's like, yeah, it does. It ends up getting conquered by outside forces. And then the only example, if you can give, is the Soviet Union managed to secure itself. Well, you already said that was not socialist. So if you want to look at them to what they're doing, well, you're going to have to become not socialist to make your socialist utopia survive. It just won't happen. So it's a pipe dream. And to say it's in any way like, I mean, the best you can give is that socialism will limp along for a while. I don't want that. I want a system where we have fat, poor people, because that's a much more preferable problem than hungry, thin people.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to focus less on the socialist systems that have gone in the past, but more on what these guys want to do now. Because if they're going to have any chance of developing their utopia, they need to convince all of us that their system is better than what we've got. So I've come up with 5 questions here, and I think this will segue nicely into the free-for-all, okay? Because this is the can socialism work part. First of all, I don't really understand in 2017 exactly who the proletariat are meant to be. Like, who are the workers, quote unquote? Is it a graduate who's just started working on, let's say, I don't know, 24 grand in a marketing department somewhere in London, who'll be earning like 50k by the time they're my age? Are they the workers? And if it's not them, who is it? So my question is, who do they have in mind when they're talking about the workers seizing the means of production? Second question, what makes you think that they would do a better job? Like, who do you think, who is that group of people are? So, for example, let's say a group of people who happen to have been hired by McDonald's, okay, to, I don't know, work on the fry vat or flip burgers. You know, this is what I used to do when I was 17. Like, what makes you think that they would do a better job than the franchisees who have fronted the capital risk and put their time and effort into running a successful business? Third question, by what right should those workers who happen to have been hired by McDonald's take that restaurant from the franchisee who spent their time and effort developing that business? Fourth, after this has happened, so after the workers have overthrown the evil McDonald's manager, what happens next when those workers want to leave that restaurant? And what happens when they take on their next group of hires? Like, are the new hires also owners of this? Like, how does that work? And fifth, by what mechanism do they allocate that new labor? Like, who wants to work in a McDonald's in the new utopia, as opposed to, let's say, be an actor or a writer or any other great dream job that you might happen to have? So how do you make the McDonald's worker be a McDonald's worker in your new utopia? Or is there just no McDonald's? So those are my 5 questions for
okay, Adrian, I'm just going to jump in quickly. I'm going to say, have you got those questions written down so you can put them in the side chat so they can refer back to them? Because,
yeah, I will.
Yeah, it's a little bit of an exposition done for them, and
yeah. There you go.
Okay. So, is there anything else the capitalist free market side wants to add?
No, I think we're good.
Okay. I will now refer back to the question, which is, has socialism ever worked, and can it? This is now a 15-minute open forum.
All right. Can I respond to a couple of things before I talk about the 5 questions, or at least some of them?
Yeah, can we deal with those at the end?
I think it's a bit of a gish gallop.
I can briefly talk about some of them, but first I wanted to say that you talked about how the socialist countries were like limping along for a while. No, actually, until they went down a wrong path, which, I mean, that's way too complex for this, like, that's going to take a long time to explain, but before they started doing erroneous policies and going down a wrong path, they were actually, even the West thought that, oh shit, the commies are going to overtake us. China was modest in the 60s, and they said that, oh yeah, the USSR is probably going to overtake the USA, but we're only going to overtake the UK. But they, everybody kind of thought that. And you said the capitalist West was booming. I mean, was it though? Like, not in the 1930s, it wasn't. Like, every now and then, maybe.
Okay, it wasn't in the 1930s, but come the fall of the Soviet Union, it was doing quite well.
Well, most people in Russia want socialism back for some reason. Like the 90s for the Russians weren't so great in capitalism. So I mean,
yeah, I'm going to put that down to the product of them being raised in a totalitarian system.
I mean, so what? They only
could you not reverse that back to you?
Yeah, they
I'm not real. I wasn't real.
If you could say that to anything.
No,
well, you already think that way because you live in a totalitarian system.
I mean, they make
let finish answer Sargon's point.
They make concrete arguments. They say we can't afford housing, we can't afford food, we can't afford healthcare, we can't even they even say oh, we used to have paid vacations, we used to be able to fly to resorts in the Soviet Union or in Eastern Europe, and now we can't even take vacations anymore. But
these are anecdotal points. I mean, I can give you lots of anecdotal points from.
All right, yeah. I mean, it's a statistic. It's the majority, most people. But
okay, well, I need to see that because I mean, there seems to be a generational divide. As far as I can tell, it seems to be the older people in the Soviet bloc who.
Yes, definitely. It seems to me that the old people who actually lived in it, they like it, and the middle-aged people really don't, because they were in the time when it was all going to shit, and then the young people are kind of more positive. But
by the way, Sargon, I just linked.
I saw that. But this is the point. I mean, I would put that down to them being indoctrinated in a totalitarian system. And before you say it, you're not a totalitarian system.
I don't even want to go into you can say that, fine, whatever. But I just wanted to say that when you were talking about mixed economy and how we can provide for people in capitalism, look at how many capitalist countries are actually providing for people. It's like 1 billion at most, and then the other people just live in absolute misery. Like you said.
No, they don't. I already covered this. Over the last 15 years, global poverty has been halved, and it's reducing.
You claim that.
Well, again, though, people in China are having their poverty eliminated, but they are killing themselves. You can't just base it on that.
Sargon,
Hang on.
Whoa.
Can I just finish and then you can go? I have seen the stats, but it's the statistics that they use are kind of questionable, because they say that if you make more than $1.90 or something, then you're not poor, then you're well off. So poverty has reduced, and even by that metric, poverty in Africa has actually increased. In China, it has decreased, but can you whatever?
No, you're just wrong.
Wait, hang on.
Over the last over 15 years, it's been halved.
Can I just finish, please? Can I just finish? So I disagree.
I thought you had as well.
I disagree with what you say, and it's more complicated than that. Of course, capitalism, as it gets out of feudalism, of course, it's going to make things better. There's countries that have still semi-feudal relations. Look at India. Most people still live in semi-feudalism in India.
All right, just try and wrap it up.
My last thing when it comes to this exact issue is that most capitalist countries are not rich. There's a handful of countries that are rich. There's the Western European countries and North American countries. that are rich imperialist countries whose corporations control the economies of most other countries. I mean, you can laugh at that, but that's...
It's more that you've done.
Right, guys, can we just change the topic? Sargon, you put a link in the chat. You put a link in the chat, which is from Politifact. I know you do Xexizy, but that was just a backup, a claim that you made earlier. But Sargon, you put a link in the chat linking to Politifact. Could you, obviously, the chat and the people watching?
Well, yeah, I was tweeting basically the World Bank.
Well, just explain to the audience what. Just how they can find that article, how they can find that.
Just Google global poverty over time, and it's the first thing that comes up.
Okay. Academic agent, I know you wanted to say something, so I'll let you interject.
Well, I mean, like, say what you want about Vladimir Putin, but he took on crony capitalism. He freed up Russian markets for the first time in a very long time, tried to ensure the rule of law. And, I mean, GDP growth since 1999 has been, like, Vladimir Putin's numbers, just in terms of, like, what he's done to the economy, is, I mean, the rate of growth is incredible in the time that he's been in power. So, like, in 1999, the GDP was $195 billion US dollars. In 2013, it was $2,133 billion US dollars. GDP per person, $1,300 US dollars in 1999. By 2013, it was 14,800 US. So here, I mean, across every metric, you can look up these figures yourself. Russia has been absolutely killing it since Putin put down some basic kind of free market economic principles. Now, it's not perfect. He's quite authoritarian, etc. But compared to what they had before, the growth rate is incredible. And I'm looking up USSR versus USA GDP over time, and it's just like, I mean, it's just no comparison at all. So I don't really see how you can make any of those arguments I mean, look at China. China's the other one. Like, since Deng in 1978 introduced like just a little bit of freedom into that economy, look what's happened to the Chinese economy versus like the Chinese economy under Mao and the Gang of Four, literally killing millions of people. So I thought
I know Xexizy wanted to make a point, so if you'd like to come in, Xexizy.
Right, okay, so I did want to bring it back to the original question a bit, but I do really need to respond to what you were talking about there, academic agent. So, you're talking about how free market policies were helping things here. I have another source that I'm going to link, and it explains 4 examples where free market policies have been implemented in various places in various different conditions, and they have been disastrous for where they have been implemented. And the 4 places that we are talking about are Chile, the United Kingdom, the US, and Russia, believe it or not. And this source is talking about neoliberalism. However, now I know none of you are neoliberals, but
again, Xexizy, I'm going to have to ask you that you tell people what to research in order to get to that link.
Capitalism with a Human Face, Part 1, Neoliberalism and its Faults on DigiNative. But anyway, I know you guys are neoliberals. I know you guys don't really like neoliberalism. However, neoliberalism in this regard, one of the main things it did was introduce freer markets, was privatize state assets. And this is essentially tending towards the free market. It's not an actual free market, but it's in that direction. And we can see actual evidence of these historical events, like many times, where these policies have resulted in huge economic problems for the countries where they're put in. So actually, historically, when we look back at it, free markets tend to fuck things up quite a bit. But again, like I said at the very start of the debate, like I said at the very start of the debate, I don't even really care if the market is free or if it's social democracy. Because as long as commodities are being produced, it has the exact same problems that I take issue with. But when you're talking about how free markets always increase the standard of living or whatever, it just doesn't. It's just wrong.
I have to interject. Please, everybody watching this now, just type into Google Chile real GDP per capita. And look at the fucking I mean, I just don't understand anybody.
Okay, hang on.
Chile as their example. Are you mad?
Hang on, I can actually directly address the point that he's trying to make, right? What you're trying to say is that failure is an aspect of capitalism, right? It is built in fundamentally to capitalism, that failure is a necessity for capitalism to function in a healthy way, right? And that's accepted.
Yeah. Boom
It's
and bust.
built in. It's completely understandable, but it's not built into socialism, and that means that when there's a failure in a capitalist system, that's normal. It's totally normal for a part of the system to fail, like Enron or whatever. Whatever it is that's failed and come crashing down, that's fine. It doesn't bring the system down. But when there's a failure in socialism, because it's all being centrally planned, that fucks everyone.
The 1930s crash basically did fuck the entire system, though. It basically almost came to its fucking knees. It almost collapsed in on itself. And there are many other times. In fact, in 2008, had we not bailed out the bankers,
exactly, they had to.
I just want to interject here, guys. I want to interject here because I know Badmouse and Bantu have both been sort of quiet on this. I was just wondering, Bantu, you wanted to say something, and then Badmouse, I'll let you take a turn.
Well, he's predicting the future. He's playing Kreskin by saying that had we not bailed out the banks, that everything would have fallen. That's not necessarily true. There's a lot of people.
I said it might have. I didn't say it definitely would have. But I said there's reason.
It might have, but that means nothing. And it might have, and it might have, like Godzilla might have come out of the ocean the next day. It doesn't really.
There are reasons to believe that, though. There are reasons to believe what I said.
Yeah, there are reasons to believe that, but there's also reasons to believe that it would have actually opened up the space for a whole bunch of innovation and for new blood to come into the market and for these overblown, big, rotting husks of corporations. And let's not pretend that corporations don't get that way. The whole point of the corporate life cycle is that they're supposed to grow and they're supposed to die. Okay? Corporations aren't supposed to exist in perpetuity. Eventually they get big, they get onerous, and they collapse. Okay? And when they do collapse, we have to let them collapse. And there are institutions and structures we can create to mitigate the problems that happen when that happens. And that's probably a conversation we should be having that we're not. But that said, the boom and bust cycle is something that we can work with, okay? Because it's one of the ways in which innovation happens, because when an economy collapses, that creates opportunity.
How is innovation related to the boom and bust cycle?
Just let Bantu finish.
Sorry.
No, you had a question. That's fine. I was done. Go ahead.
Yeah, so how is innovation in any way related to boom and bust? If anything, innovation goes down when there are busts.
So no, because chaos is a ladder. People, as soon as the area becomes free, as soon as whatever was essentially preventing other people from rising is removed, then other people with their innovations have got the opportunity.
Yeah, it lowers the cost of entry.
You don't need to have a boom and bust cycle to do this, though. You don't need to have the misery that comes along with economic crashes to do that.
Controlled economy,
no, but you need a free society.
Failure is a failure of the whole
two
economy.
at the same time. I can't
Hang on.
do that.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sargon. Go ahead, Sargon.
Yeah, look, when you have an economy that is completely centrally planned, any oversight, and we can guarantee that there are going to be oversights, is going to cause a problem to the entire economy. It's not just one sector that's going to fail. It's going to have a knock-on effect because it's all intricately linked by a direct plan rather than just the independent actions of other people that can respond far more rapidly to what has happened.
What we're talking about here, though, are market crashes, and there are no markets under central planning. Therefore, to talk about crashes...
Yeah, no. I appreciate there'll be no markets, but that doesn't mean there won't be any problems. And when there's a famine or a shortage or something has happened, then the system will be far slower to react.
The same thing happens under capitalism. When there are famines, shit gets really bad under capitalism.
People don't starve.
Let me give you my favourite example.
Yeah, they do.
No, they don't.
Okay, no. Let agent.
Let me give you my favourite example of this. I'm sure a lot of people watching this are gamers. I will always point to the great video game market crash of 1983. Literally gave us Nintendo. I mean, it literally gave us Nintendo. That was the market solution to it, was the Nintendo seal of quality. Super Mario Brothers, all of your childhood memories, it literally came from a market solution to a crash that was let to happen.
You're implying it wouldn't have been able to have a market.
Did they have Nintendo in Russia?
Man. Go for it.
No.
What?
So, I just want to...
Oh, yeah, you know the Russian Nintendo?
Yeah.
I mean, they're Tetris, but yeah.
No, they didn't.
Can I just say something?
I'm thinking of something else.
Hang on. It's becoming a bit of a...
Hang
on.
Am I muted?
Hang on, Bantu, I think you wanted to raise a point.
Oh, damn, I did?
Did you?
No,
It was
a bad man.
There's going on in my own house as well, so I've got to keep tabs on two things at once. But
finish Wall Street was just about to say something.
But I suppose we'll sort of direct. I mean, we've got 40 seconds left, but we're probably going to stay on this a lot longer. But I'd like to sort of direct this to academics' questions that he asked earlier. So do any of you want to answer them?
I mean, the thing is, they're not really too related to the actual original question. But I mean, we could. But
can you guys hear me?
Can socialism work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Because I've been asking to get to be able to speak, but nobody seems to react anyway. I thought it was muted. Because I just wanted to correct a couple of things that the academic agent said about just a couple of small things about the GDP, about the Putin thing. If you actually Google the Soviet and Russian GDP, you'll see that in the Soviet GDP, it goes up all the time. It goes up. And then when the Soviet Union is gotten rid of, you get the Yeltsin government, the first capitalist government. The GDP is cut in half, and then Putin comes in, and he did better policy, so it recovered. Took 20 years to recover from Yeltsin, from privatization and capitalism, but it did recover eventually. And China, you said that China is now developing well because of capitalist economy and stuff like that. They had an average GDP growth of 9%, even under Mao. It was tight. It was a more agrarian society, so it averages to that over the years, but it was different because it was a more agrarian society. But it's kind of weird to even say that China could never do what it does now without the base that was built by the Mao era. It's kind of weird to say they could have never done this without it.
Can I ask Sargon a question I've been meaning to for a while?
Yeah.
A while ago when you were talking about how, when I referred to the Soviet Union managed to hold itself under Lenin, you said, if that's the case, then you need to move away from socialism.
Well, you said they weren't socialist. So
they were a socialist revolution that was attempting socialism, but they
failed to have socialism.
They didn't have the ability to attain socialism because of their material conditions, which is the way I see it. Then you said, well, in that case, then the only way you can defend the revolution is by abandoning socialism, right?
Well, judging by your example, yeah.
Yeah, right. So basically, you're implying that the methods that Lenin used to secure the Russian Revolution is in any way not compatible with what socialism is. And if that's the case, you have to explain what that is, because I see no reason.
Okay, no, it's not that. It's you said they secured themselves, and we need to look at the means by which they did that. And they did that by being a giant totalitarian state that essentially enslaved the entire population and
not around 1917. They didn't even have the ability to enslave the population if they wanted to in 1917, through 1924.
No, but by the end of World War II...
They were in a civil war, dude. Yeah, by the end of World War II, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about that revolutionary phase.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's
the rest of Europe was rather busy than to invade Russia at that point.
So, except they all did invade Russia, though.
Yeah, 13 countries invaded it simultaneously.
Literally every decade, like 1910s, 1920s, 1930s, 1940s.
And at no point in that do you ever say that they're socialist, right?
I think they were at the transitionary phase under Lenin, and then eventually they kind of...
But at no point they actually transitioned into socialism, did they?
No.
He thinks they were halfway.
Again, you need to explain. No, you do, because you need to explain what methods they use to defend themselves and how they're incompatible with socialism. And actually,
giant empire.
Why couldn't? So
you tell me why they weren't socialist. I'm not the socialist.
They couldn't
well, that's completely unrelated.
As far as I'm concerned, the Soviet Union was socialist.
Yeah, well, I believe they were
okay.
socialist because they didn't have the industrialization to be brought up upon. But why? I'm saying why couldn't say
hang on. Let Xexizy explain, and then Sargon, you can rebut once he's finished.
Okay, no.
So yeah, I'm saying that they couldn't attain socialism because they. Sorry, Finnish Bolshevik. I know this is supposed to be killing you right now, but we'll save this for another time between you and me.
Can't even agree amongst yourselves, you know.
Oh, look, you know how the left is. But anyway, so basically, I don't think they could have attained socialism because, like I said, they were still semi-feudalistic. They didn't have that industrialization that socialism needs, and therefore they had that transitionary phase where they had worker control of the state. They had in the cities at least worker control of the mean production, but they couldn't eliminate commodity production because they were still relying on it because they were still industrializing. That's why I don't believe they couldn't attain socialism. However, the actual political methods that they used to secure themselves as a workers' state, I believe, is something that we could look into and possibly adopt for future revolutions.
I want to make a small point that I want to make a small point that maybe makes this help easier to understand.
Can you?
Yeah, I did say Sargon would have to respond, and then you can respond to Sargon's point.
Okay, so look, the problem is, A, we're not using an example of socialism, and if we use any of your examples of socialism, it's like
we're using an example of socialist revolution.
Yeah, okay, but it's okay. You have to survive after the revolution. I mean, all of the examples that you give of socialism working all collapse within a few years from outside forces.
That's during the revolution.
Well, okay, but if you can't do this successfully, and the only successful examples you have are what you consider to be not socialism, I don't see how you can make the argument that socialism is viable.
Okay, again, you're misunderstanding it, though. Like, you're missing.
All right. I'm just going to finish, make a point, and then I'm going to probably.
Yeah,
add
I think finish Bolshevik. It should get.
I'm going to add another 10 minutes at a time because I think this is sort of a big issue. Specifically addressing the questions that Agent has asked, because we've not really sort of specifically delved into them. We've not had any sort of quick-fire, precise answers on the questions and discussion of the things that Agent put forward. So if you just want to make your point, Bolshevik, and then I'll add an extra 10 minutes.
Yeah, I just want to explain that basically Xexizy defines the Soviet Union that it wasn't socialist because it had commodity production. Now, they were debating amongst themselves if they even had commodity production. And I'm not even going to get into what that means, but the Soviets decided, yes, we have commodity production, but it's different from capitalist commodity production. And under Xexizy's definition, that's not socialist. Under the Soviets' definition, it was socialist. So it's not even that they really couldn't, it's just that they had a different definition of it. But you could say the same thing that they, because of their circumstances, they couldn't transition to full communism, which is true, like in, that is true.
Okay, I'm just going to dedicate 10 minutes to the questions. If you, I'll refer to the socialists if you want to answer.
Oh, one last thing. So when Xexizy was talking about the industrialization and stuff like that, they had a very practical mindset when they were going about this. So they thought, all right, we don't have industry. Well, let's industrialize then. So then they did. And they were like, all right, now we got the basic requirements for what we consider socialism, so let's do it. And then in the future, when we meet these new requirements, the prerequisites for full communism, then we can do that. And they were working towards that. That's what he means. He doesn't mean that it was just somehow unattainable.
Everyone else who's tried to work towards that seems to have failed. And I'm afraid I find the human cost to be absolutely intolerable. In the attempt to get there, I think anything is better than that.
Could I interject on that quickly?
Yeah, go for it, Badmouse.
You think?
Yeah. Okay. What do you have to say then in regards to capitalism? Capitalism doesn't get a gun and shoot you at where you're standing. Okay,
sometimes.
Rather it just deprives you. Well, sometimes, but it largely, in terms of the vast majority of deaths that occur under capitalism, it happens from neglect. From denial of resources and not allowing them resources because they don't have enough money.
The number is just far lower. I mean, in the 20th century, capitalism was responsible for around 28 million deaths.
No.
That's the lowest. No, absolutely was. That's the lowest of the ideologies, right? And even then, if you want to redefine these things, which I'm sure you will, it would lead us down a long rabbit hole. So I don't want to have to go down that. But,
you talk about no.
Let Sargon finish.
You keep talking about people dying en masse, but the data just doesn't bear that out. The data shows that people are getting less poor and more wealthy. I mean, we've got economic migrants coming from sub-Saharan Africa with iPhones, going across on dinghies to get to Italy. It's just like, the things you're saying aren't really representative of how reality really is.
Well, that's the thing. Like, there's this thing in imperialism, which we know as uneven economic development. So you can have a semi-feudal country where there's like one city where people have iPhones. It's totally possible. Like that doesn't mean anything.
Okay, but that's not a capitalism problem, is it? That's a problem with semi-feudal countries.
I would like.
25,000 people die of hunger a day today, right now.
Yeah, they do. And it's not because there isn't the resources, and it's not because capitalism
There's more than enough resources to feed all of these people.
Except in a socialist country. There
Exactly.
aren't. Okay? This isn't the question. You're just wrong.
In a capitalist country, the resources are there, so our resource production is sufficient. So it's
the shops are full and the fridges are empty.
No, they're not. They're not empty. They're not.
Well, I mean, in Africa they don't even have fridges.
What, 3 million people in this country, for example, in America, sorry? are on the
So
streets.
1% of the population?
Okay.
Can
What
I-
about-
Hang on. We've gone off topic. Guys, we've gone off topic.
I'd like to make a small point, okay? All I like to say is, okay, we're talking about feeding people. I have given you a set of questions, okay, about a mechanism that currently is able to give you a double cheeseburger for, is it £1.29? I could take a £5 note, walk into McDonald's, and literally buy 3 burgers. I'd be full all day. It's 1,000 calories for £5, okay? I want to know how you guys would do it better. That's how it works
Right.
now.
We'll talk about the questions.
Wait. Okay, we have gone off topic. You are right. So, referring back to the questions, do you have any sort of quick fire answers? Like, which question did you reach? The second one, I believe.
Okay, so the questions, right. Proletariat under 2017, those who don't own means of production. What makes us think we do a better job of workers owning the means of production? Well, worker-owned co-ops today actually are more productive than non-worker-owned co-ops, and I'll link you a study to that now. Actually, I'll do it after I answer the questions. By what right should they take it from the franchise? Well, that would require us going into surplus extraction, and that's a whole other topic that we could honestly dedicate a whole other question to. But basically, without explaining the mechanisms, we believe that the only way that profit under capitalism can be generated is through stealing labor from the workers. So that's why they should have that justification, because they don't need their boss, and so they should have that justification to overthrow their boss. But again, we probably shouldn't get into the details of that unless we want to reserve some time later to do it.
Okay, wait. Before the capitalist interrupt, I just want to clarify with the other two socialists finish and Badmouse. Are you sort of okay with Xexizy's definitions there? Are you okay? Is there anything you want to add?
I would like to add something. So, about the proletariat, what he's saying is technically correct, but I would like to make the point out the thing that in most countries, like we're talking about the imperialist West, where all the money is. If you look at India, there's people literally eating their own shit, like literally. So the proletariat in India is much different from the proletariat in the couple imperialist countries.
I'm sorry, I reject.
Wait, Sargon, Badmouse.
So there.
Hang on.
So the difference between third world proletariat and first world proletariat, there is a difference. And then I wanted to just get a clarification. Is the second question is it about? What is it? Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, Agent, if you want to answer that.
So, okay. What makes it so? If you look at a McDonald's chain, somebody buys the franchise.
Are you asking if the workers can run it?
I'm saying
do a better job of running it.
What makes you think? Yeah. What makes you think that the workers that have just so happened to have been hired by McDonald's that week are going to do a better job of running that company?
I have linked a study as to why I think that. It shows that worker co-ops are more productive than normal.
Yes, and
hold on. Let me answer. So
worker co-ops in a capitalist nation.
I'm going to start muting in a second.
Choice because
I've made a video on that, Rhino.
All right, Xexizy, I need to wait. Xexizy, the source that you link, can you provide people?
If you just Google worker co-ops more productive, it's the very top one.
Okay.
So can I finish?
Badmouse? Yeah, you can finish, and then I'll go to Badmouse, and then I'll ask the capitalists their opinion on the questions answered, and then hopefully we can move on to the next subject.
Okay, so you ask, can the workers run McDonald's? Can they run it better? Whatnot? It's a bit of a straw man because you're saying that they have to be just total recruits who were hired that same day or the day before or something. What we're saying, we don't want capitalists. What is a capitalist? A capitalist is somebody who owns the place. A CEO is somebody who typically runs the place. They might be the same person, but that's not necessary. So the workers can run it, like people who they're running most workplaces right now. Like even the boss doesn't typically own the place. We can have, if we really need some really hardcore expertise, then we can get an expert worker, but it doesn't have to be an expert capitalist. We want to get rid of the capitalist aspect, not the idea of having experts.
Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it, actually.
Should we ask the CEO what he thinks of that?
Yeah, please do.
I don't know, Fox, whose turn was it meant to be next? I think Fox had a list. but he's muted.
Mouse, I believe.
I just wanted to respond to the thing about cooperatives. Okay, cooperatives are more efficient than businesses, but they're not more competitive than businesses. I ask you to think about what you think is more important, efficiency or competition.
Do I think efficiency or competition is more important?
There's no difference.
Efficiency derives from competition.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Then why a worker called...
Competition drives us to be more... Because I can explain this question for you very easily. Okay, if you just want to hold on for a second. Cooperatives work very well. They're great. I think they're fantastic. I'm actually looking into some as potential opportunities for myself down the road. But the point of a cooperative is that when you're starting something, and let's remember that what you're saying at first is that this is happening in a capitalist nation, which means that these people this is the very first point I made earlier, is that these are groups of people that have the freedom to come together with an idea and to take it to market. And they are making profit, right? They're just deciding to make less profit or function in a different way. They have different priorities over just profit. And that's fine and dandy. But for this to even happen, you still have to exist within a paradigm where you're allowed to freely come together and make profit. Profit's still there. You haven't gone to this place where all of a sudden there's no profit and they're just doing whatever. Okay? So these guys have come together, and also they're choosing to come together, picking competent, capable people. Okay? Because that's the whole point, is would the workers run something better? Well, if workers could run something better, why isn't everything a cooperative? Why wouldn't every worker be capable of running a company? Because not everybody has that capacity. Not everybody has the talent to run something. People are not equal. Okay? There are those who are driven. What, sorry?
I just literally told you the reason why. Because they can't compete. Because they have to give more money and resources to their staff. It's to benefit the staff. That's the point.
I just like to point out that the time has run out, so we'd like to. I sort of like to get.
We've been on this one for a while.
I'll send Rhino a video at the end of this video.
Yeah, no, because Badmouse made a video basically dealing with everything Rhino's saying, and that's what's actually really good.
Okay. Is there anything else the socialist side wants to say about this?
Oh, okay.
I would like to just point out that when you say that co-ops must exist in a market economy, that is not the case. In China, in the Soviet Union, most people worked in a cooperative.
Okay. Is there anything else, Sargon, Agent, Bantu?
Yeah, I want to make 3 points. The casual reference to overthrowing your boss is precisely the reason I didn't want to discuss ethics with communists, because it's such a casual phrase, but you don't even seem to understand what you're saying. You went and applied for a job, and they said, yeah, okay, you can have a job. You can leave at any time, and yet your solution is, what are you even going to do with the boss? What if he violently resists? Are you going to kill him? You know, the idea, and this is not yours to take.
So now you're making a moral argument. We make a moral argument that he's exploiting the worker. You make a moral argument that he's not.
You're making a moral argument that he's exploiting you, though. You're saying, I just want what he has.
No.
He's not exploiting. You can leave at any time.
You listen to what I said.
You can leave and you can live in poverty.
The reason why... Hold on, Finn. I said that the reason why is because that profit comes from the stolen labor of the workers.
It's not stolen. You volunteered it.
Stolen.
Whatever choice do they have, Sargon?
And he said, hey, I'll give you some money in exchange for labor. And you signed a contract.
So what happens if you don't work for anybody? You starve.
No, you don't. You get on the welfare state.
What if there isn't a welfare state in your country?
Hang on.
Then you do
hang on. Okay, I think Sargon has sort of made his point. I think this is a disagreement that we're not going to sort of get past.
I have a more important point, right? The worker co-ops can exist within capitalism, and as you say, they're really efficient. So eventually, everything will be a worker co-op. But in your system, entrepreneurs can't exist. And that's the difference. You can exist in ours, we can't exist in yours.
What do you find an entrepreneur to be? Because I'm assuming it's something in relation to a market. So yeah, by definition, of course it can't, because markets don't exist.
Yes,
but that's a bit of a redundant point.
Yeah, but
that doesn't mean people can't get together and start new things. You're implying that's what it means, but it's not.
Right, hang on.
What I'm saying is you're putting barriers to entry, because suddenly we've got to go and contact the Dell supercomputer and ask if it can allocate the resources. I mean, do you not think there's going to be a backlog there?
I mean, there's always government officials you have to contact. You can't just, it's not the Wild West.
Well,
right, hang on, Agent. I just want to get past this question, honestly. Agent, if you just sort of have your final thoughts, and then we'll move on.
One super important thing that they didn't deal with, but is very, very, very important. let's even pretend that co-ops are fantastic, okay? Let's pretend that they take over the means of production and they're all fantastic employees and that they're better than the CEO. What happens in the next gen? Like, what happens to their new hires? Like, are the new hires also part of, like, what happens at one generation down? Like, who owns the means of production then? Is it suddenly outside of the expertise of those people who grew up in the industry, or is it somebody else? Because that's where it all seems to break down for me. Like, I can understand, like, there was a time where, in Wales, where the miners bought their own mine, and it worked well for a time, you know, because they'd spent their whole lives there. But what happens when they have to, like, hire, like, does the 17-year-old then have a stake in it as well, or does he have the expertise, or does it then go to...
Wait, hang on, Agent. I wouldn't necessarily ask questions since we're moving sort of forward, like, rhetorical.
Very important, because it's very important, though, because they are proposing to overthrow a system that has worked for 200 years now with something where they don't have answers to these questions. Like, I know what happens under capitalism. I don't know what happens in this magical co-op world.
No, we have answers.
All right, don't interrupt. Finish.
Carry on.
Okay, so, what you're saying, do they, like, you can start new co-ops, you can get more people the people who are not already in a co-op, they can start a new one, or the state will start factories and start new places where people will work. In fact, employment is guaranteed, so of course, like, they're gonna do that.
Mandatory.
Right, I'm gonna let Agent respond to this and then we'll move on, because we've been spending so much time on this.
I don't see how this is just... Yeah, I just don't understand how this is such a difficult... Like, what do you think? Like, society is just gonna collapse after one generation, like, they just... Like, what is gonna happen?
Well, it's about expertise and it's about the points of interest. Like, the reason that companies tend to work is because like, I don't know, take whatever the industry is. It could be burgers, it can be, like, grapes, whatever. Their passion, their burning desire, their interest is in, like, that thing, which is what drives it forward. Like, I mentioned Nintendo. Nintendo love making great games, okay? Like, but if the workers decided to seize the means of, like, how do you replace, like,
okay,
they're not the same people.
If
you end up with the state taking over, and then then you've got some mindless bureaucrat running it instead of the people who have the burning passion for the product.
Okay, I did mute Bolshevik there because I do sort of want to move on, but next question. You can unmute yourself now, but the next question, I believe, I'll be asking the capitalist side first. You have 10 minutes, of course. Is human nature constrained or perfectible? You have 10 minutes.
Shall I take this first?
Go ahead, mate.
Go ahead.
Okay, so what this means is a constrained human nature just means that there are certain characteristics that are common to all people everywhere. Okay, regardless of time or place or culture or anything else, there are certain characteristics that we can say are human. Okay. And one of the recurring features that we find across history is, for example, that people have a habit of being self-interested as opposed to being others-focused. Many, like, people have made this point before capitalism, long before capitalism. You know, you can find Cicero saying it, you can find bloody Seneca saying it, Machiavelli, Thomas Hobbes.
Just to add, I think David Hume makes the best argument that people can't be anything but self-interested.
So all of these people in conditions prior to capitalism have been making this point, okay? And this is where, because it seems to me that you have to believe in socialism, you have to believe that human nature isn't constrained in that way, that you can actually perfect it, that you can better it, that you can somehow transcend what we are as human beings in order to make the society work. That somehow, if you only just change the institutions, if you only just change the way society runs, then all of a sudden people would magically stop being self-interested, selfish, and all the rest of it. So that's why I asked the question. Over to you guys.
Is it our turn?
No, sorry. Did you want to go back?
Sorry about that.
This is on the constrained or perfectible?
Yeah.
Well, nothing's perfectible. I mean, Jesus, that's self-evident. You know, that's where we start with this. No one's ever going to be perfect. I mean, our nature will never be perfect. We'll always be somewhat competitive with each other, if for no other reason than for things like sexual reproduction. Regardless of how you frame it, people have to compete with each other, okay? Unless, you're going to allow equal access to sexual partners, which I think sometimes I think that's what inspires the socialists. It's just like, yeah, if we get socialists, I'll be able to get all the chicks. But in terms of the constraints, I mean, we exist within a reality that exists outside of us. This is the world that we're in, and there's realities that guide it. We have to eat, we have to sleep, we have to crap, we have to procreate, we have to do all these things. And these fundamentals are going to inform who we are as people. Okay, so what we've done over time is create proxies that allow us to move away from things like violence and direct competition into more peaceful ways of coexistence. Okay, so we're deeply constrained by the reality that we live in. We can't redefine reality. We have to work within it. Okay, and any concept that a society is perfectible, or that we'll be able to create this immutable, perfect, ongoing society that never corrupts is fantasy. Life is always going to be some form of struggle, and we're always going to have to function within it.
Okay, so my issue is actually entirely with the question itself and the presuppositions behind it, and I'll use Oscar Wilde and Bertrand Russell, two famous socialists, to be my guide on this one, because the whole point, as I understand it, is freedom. That's the point of socialism, I think. I'm not interested in what someone else considers to be perfectible, even if we are. In fact, it's no one else's business whether I, as an individual, am constrained or perfectible. It's not their business. They don't deserve to have any interest in what I become. That's my choice, and my choice alone. Let's say I want to be a complete dropout and do the bare minimum with my life. That's my choice. And if I don't have the freedom to choose that, I don't have freedom. So then, so the question is essentially irrelevant, and I don't want some socialist dictator telling me what I do and do not have to do.
All right, Agent, you wanted to make one final point?
Oh yeah. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that Thomas Sowell, who's obviously an economist I reference quite frequently, says that this underlying belief in these two different things leads to like a very different way of seeing a lot of things. Like capitalists or people who believe in free markets tend to think in terms of incentives, because we know that people are self-interested, so we think about the motives and the incentives. Whereas socialists have a habit of thinking in terms of outcomes. We tend to think in terms of incremental progress, whereas they tend to think in terms of like categorical imperatives, either or propositions, as opposed to, some people might prefer to do this, some people might prefer to do that. And the final thing, and I think it's the most important thing, is that how you respond to this question means, like, we tend to think not in terms of solutions, but in trade-offs. Everything's a trade-off. It's like choosing to do this thing means that we don't do that thing. It's a trade-off. It's a weighing up of cost and benefits. Whereas a solution, quote unquote, is trying to like bypass that basic reality. And this is really fundamental to how you respond to all sorts of questions. So I think it's important to point out those different categories of thinking about things. So I'll leave the socialists have their say.
Okay, I will ask the socialists the same question. You will also have 10 minutes max. Is human nature constrained or perfectible?
I'll just say two things real quick. Sargon, on your point, I actually pretty much agree with everything you said. Like, of course you have the freedom to do all of that thing. It's like, no one is going to tell you that you can't sit around all day and do nothing. But why would you want to sit around all day and do nothing?
It's your business. It's my business.
Well, then do it. Do it. I don't care.
But don't
the economy doesn't rely on you in particular not sitting around your ass all day. But the question of socialism and human nature being, malleable or anything. I mean, personally, I think to a degree it is. But even if it wasn't, it wouldn't actually conflict with the socialist society in any way, as I see it at least. Because, for instance, I mean, some people think it relies on people not being selfish, that they don't just hoard loads of things. But why on earth would you hoard 12 supercars when, you know, there's no reason to do that for showing off, because everybody can get their cars. That's just an inconvenience for you to, like, you know, drive them and store them. And, you know, secondly, like, when things aren't scarce, again, I know I've already talked about this, the labor vouchers. Again, this is how we deal with resources that are scarce and that we need to properly distribute in a certain way. And that's how we get people to be incentivized to work, to go out and work and do labor that's needed by society, so that they can then save up and get luxuries that they might want. So I really don't see how in any way human nature of people being selfish, essentially, is in conflict with socialism in the slightest. Although, you know, looking back at history, human nature kind of is malleable, but it's kind of a relevant question to whether or not it works with socialism.
Do you have anything to add, Finish, or Badmouse?
I just wanted to talk generally on the idea of human nature. We don't deny, of course, that human nature exists. We just agree that it adapts and it changes towards what scenario it's in. So if you look at the entire human history, capitalism accounts for 0.1% of its entire existence. I doubt that we'd just sort of be defining these things as, you know, the status quo as it is, that is life, when it's only 0.1%. So, yeah, basically what I'm just generally saying here is that you can't just go and simply define it as, well, that's just human nature, that's the way that things go, when we've obviously existed in different ways, and different people have had different views throughout history. I'm rambling at this point, but that's my main point. Okay, it adapts to the situations it's in. If you have a scarce society, then you are more likely to keep everything to yourself. If you have a society where everybody has enough, then you're more likely to take a few risks, I suppose. You're more likely to be generous to people. That's my point.
Yeah, like, this kind of human nature argument, it's been used by all societies, like, you know, Plato used to say, like, oh, it's just natural that we have slaves. Like, of course, like, some people are just naturally slaves, and some people are just naturally serfs, and
I think that was Aristotle, sorry, but go on.
No, like, he said that, like, you...
No, you are thinking of Aristotle, dude.
Yeah. Really? Didn't he say
Plato,
that?
in Plato's Republic, he said that there would be no slaves, but it's a relevant point.
Oh, right, yeah.
It's a moot point. Sorry, carry on, please.
Yeah, so everybody, like, even in the Soviet Union, they said, like, oh yeah, but did you know that human nature is just naturally communist? Like, everybody can say that, but, like, of course, humans, lots of evolutionary scientists, they say that, humans are the most cooperative species ever. Maybe not ever, but, you know, one of them. Humans are very cooperative. We are in massive groups working together much more than any other kind of animal or creature. Are humans greedy and selfish? Yes, to a point, of course. But I would argue that much of it is facilitated by the society in which you live. Like, again, you might say that it's brainwashing, but many people from, like, East Germany, they said that in the old days when they were in East Germany, people just behaved much more communally. And you can say that's brainwashing, but alright, if you can brainwash people into being communal and cooperative, then it's possible, then I guess. But also, we don't rely on this.
He's not saying we should do this as a disclaimer. He's just in relation to the question, just before anyone goes. Sorry.
Yeah, and we're not stupid. Like, we don't think that, oh, if humans aren't just perfectly like altruistic, then the whole system is just going to collapse. No, we don't rely on that. We have systems in place, like the Soviet Union, for instance. I know Xexizy doesn't agree with this, but they, for instance, they had because they had so few people from who could read, because of how shitty the Russian Empire used to be. They had so few people who could read that they had to have a certain amount of technocracy, like have the experts run some things until they could educate their population enough. And they used monetary incentives. They would pay people who work longer and people who work more demanding positions. They would pay them more as a transition stage from horrible capitalism to like low stage socialism to finally a really existing socialism and then onwards. And even the whole labor voucher thing, like that is a transition from money to labor vouchers to not money. So we don't really rely on this idea that human nature just has to be perfect or instantly perfect.
Okay. Mouse, you wanted to add something before we went to the open forum?
I just wanted to clear up one thing on the socialist idea of like equality, because Reiner mentioned it just quickly there in regards to, how we want it to be in the ideal, nature and so forth. We aren't arguing in regards to, taxonomic equality. The idea Dave Cullen keeps on going on about how we should chop off the basketball players' legs in order to play games and stuff like that. Okay, that's not what we're on about. Oh, sorry about that, that's my phone. What we're on about is economic equality. Okay, we want people to have the same power over positions as possible, and I think that is attainable. We don't want to just make everyone be able to have 72 virgins or whatever. Okay.
Actually, I'd like to just very, very, very quickly, that's a brilliant point. And really, socialists, we're not for equal outcome, we're for equal opportunity. We believe that with a level playing field, by not having wealth inequality, that's when you allow people to only rely on their merit alone, instead of having extra money to get, say, privately educated or something like that.
Yeah,
socialists aim not to make everyone the same, but to give everyone the same chance. So
right.
We don't want a world where 8 people own as much as like the other 3 billion. That's not equal opportunity,
Okay. So we discussed about this. I will ask the question again as an open forum. Bantu has kindly offered to start, so I'll ask the question again. Is human nature constrained or perfectible? Bantu, over to you.
Thank you. Okay, I just want to run down a few of the things that were mentioned during the your speeches. I'm going to start from, I just made a list here and I'm just going to run them down quick. Okay, first you said, why would you hoard supercars? Well, none of your business. Because I like them. Because I think supercars are awesome. And I want 12 of them. Because they're cool. So you really have, who cares? It's not for you to tell someone else why they want something. Okay, just because you don't see the rationale in it, just because you don't see it as valid, you have absolutely no right to tell somebody else what they can and can't want. Okay, that's number one. Capitalism has been 0.1% of all of humanity's existence. Yeah, you're right. And look at the progress that's been made in that time. Like, we have skyrocketed in that time. We're on Mars, guys.
We accept that. In fact, that's part of our argument.
Cameron, I just want to interject here just to give you are you okay with 10 minutes on the subject as opposed to 15, everyone?
Doesn't matter to me.
I guess, just to make up for loss.
Yeah.
Scarcity breeds selfishness. Well, not always. I think one of the best examples of that comes from one of your own people, Kropotkin, out in Siberia when he was observing wildlife and whatnot. He saw lots of cooperation because selfishness or cooperation is not so much a function of just scarcity, but of the actual environment that you're in. In some situations, the only way to get resources is to cooperate. And in other situations, the only way to get resources is to compete for them. Okay? And the fundamentals of that is what's going to matter. And the other thing on that front is that people still seem to understand that cooperation and competition are related things. They work together. Okay? The best analogy I've heard of this is you look at a hockey game. Okay? Is a hockey game cooperative or competitive? Well, it's both. Okay, because you have people that come in and there's a set of rules that they've agreed to and they choose to play by them, and then they compete against each other within this framework that they've agreed upon. So cooperation and competition are not mutually exclusive things. They're things that complement each other. Cooperation has driven massive amounts of human development, but also within a competitive framework. You have every company is cooperative by definition. It's people working together to create a common goal within a competitive framework against a bunch of other companies that are also trying to do the same thing better than that group, and so on and so forth, and they all compete within an overarching society that provides a framework that they function within, that they cooperate with by obeying the rules to some degree, usually.
Can I ask a question to that? In a factory with a production line where you have a CEO who determines how the factory line is run and what's done in particular, and there's no say from the workers on this, how is that cooperative?
Because the workers are cooperating by doing what the CEO says, because he knows best.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay.
I
would say that all you want, but if you think it's so easy, go do it. Why isn't everybody running their own company then? If everyone can do it,
because
why is that doing it?
Can I say
right, because they're oppressed. Because they're oppressed. Hey, I got news for you. I come from a single-parent household where my mom made minimum wage,
More anecdotes.
Okay. Who cares?
Mouse,
Yeah.
hang on. Bantu, can I just get it to Mouse just for a second?
Yeah.
Mouse,
You mentioned this anecdote. My father, my mother, whatever, came up from poverty and became the richest person in Timbuktu. Okay, look. Is that attainable for every single person?
No, that's my point.
What?
So it's
What
not
do
a
you
good, not a
It's
good
not
system.
attainable for everyone. Most people can't do it, or they would. What you're saying is people can't do
That's
it because they're
not a good
stop,
argument.
stop a second. Yes, it is. You're saying that people can't do it because they are oppressed and can't overcome the barriers in front of them because of poverty. I came from a poor family and overcame it, so it can be done. As a fundamental, you're disproven. It can be done. Most people can.
We don't care if it can be done or
I-
not. It's the fact they have to do
fortunate
it in the
enough-
first place.
I was
That's not equal
fortunate enough.
opportunity.
I was
If you
fortunate
have to
enough.
do it, but other people don't.
Oh my!
then it's-
I'm still talking. Can you mute him, please? Seriously. I did it because I was fortunate enough to be blessed with a certain set of skills that work to my advantage. I am very, very privileged. Okay? That's reality. Not everyone can do that. I'm a lucky guy. Okay? Now, moving on, because I don't want to harp on this point anymore, because if you're going to sit there and say that, like, everybody doesn't succeed simply because they're oppressed, then, I mean, I don't know what to tell you.
That's not what,
There's
that's
a
not
lot
what I said. You're strawmanning me.
You're assuming that the reason that people don't do it is because they don't want to. That's
I didn't
where
say
your
that.
assumption comes from.
And you're
Yeah,
assuming
not at all.
that
Hang on, I'd
they
like to
don't
hear
do
from
it
Sargon and Agent since they've been sort of quite
Okay.
quiet on this.
Yeah, okay, I've got a few things to say. Hey, I mean, to start with, you're assuming that people do want to do it. You don't know that. You don't know what people want.
They don't.
Yeah, I don't think they do either, to be honest. I mean,
We can
most
convince
people
them of the
are-
fact that they're happier in co-ops.
yeah, but I think most people are followers and not leaders. So, you know, but that
Well,
doesn't
okay, no
mean we
one's
need
a
to
leader
kill
in a
the
co-op.
leaders. That doesn't
They are
mean
co-ops are a
leaders
bunch of leaders that come together.
Yeah,
Okay,
it
so is
doesn't mean
every
that
person who
leadership
votes
is inherently
in our
wrong.
society? In our democratic society, is everybody who votes a leader? Because that's the logic you're using here, Bantu.
Right. Okay. Right.
That's what you said.
Listen.
Yes. To a degree.
Okay. So you said earlier, Xexizy, that you were in favour of equality of opportunity, and then I can't remember whether it was Badmouse or Finish who said 8% of the world's wealth is held by like 50% of the world's wealth is owned by 8% of the people. We want to change that. Well, then you're for
No,
equality.
by 8 people. But
Well, how
what's
can
that?
you- whatever the percentage is, the fact that you want to change that means that you're not for equality of opportunity, you're for equality of outcome. That's the outcome.
Well,
I
no,
think,
because we're saying that this wealth inequality is the barrier to equal opportunity.
Yeah.
So if we remove wealth inequality, we will have equal opportunity. That's what
Okay,
we're saying.
but the point is, in a planned economy, everyone has to follow the plan. So I don't have the opportunity to follow my own plan.
What
I
would your
think
plan
there's a
be?
misconception about, or sorry, what you're saying, something, Badmouse?
No, that's all right. You can go.
Well, the answer, what would my plan be? The answer is different to the plan that I'm being given.
Well, it's a bit of a misconception because you assume that the plan is this like crazy micromanaged thing where you get a piece of paper that says you have to make like X amount of things or otherwise something's gonna happen. Like no, it's not like that. But
Well, you were just laying out plans for workers working in co-ops and in factories and all this sort of thing.
No, the point is
No,
that
the
the workers
plan-
lay out those plans themselves,
the plan,
democratically.
I mean,
Through
yeah,
the Dell computer.
but
No,
the-
through their own democracy.
Right, Agent, I know
Then
you
it's
wanted
not-
to raise.
then
Hang on, Agent. I know you wanted to raise a couple of points.
One thing I think is really important to remember is that scarcity does not mean shortage. I think that there's often a lot of slippage between those two things. Okay, scarcity doesn't mean shortage. Scarcity means that people want more than there is. Okay, doesn't matter how much of the thing there is. People want more than the total number there is.
isn't that a shortage?
I can link you articles to it from The Guardian about people who are on like 70k, 90k, moaning about the fact that their house is smaller than everyone else's house on the road. Okay, let's just say we gave everybody a swimming pool.
You just made a point that Marx makes. Sorry, you just used
wait
one
a
of
second.
Marx's talking points.
Wait a second.
I had to
You give
say that.
everybody a
Sorry.
swimming pool. That's an equal outcome. It only takes 3 people to one I don't know, an outhouse as well, and all of a sudden you have inequality again.
No,
So that's one very important. That's a basic economic principle. That
we're not saying
scarcity
everyone
means-
has to have the same. There will be
Okay.
like very
So-
slight. Yeah, people will have different things.
Well, wait a second. Now, it doesn't matter, okay, because since scarcity means that people want more than the total amount that there is, okay, all we're talking about is the allocation of scarce resources which have alternative uses, okay? If I choose to if you choose to use labor for this thing, it means you're not using it for that thing. If you choose to use milk to produce cheese, it means you're not using it to produce some other product that uses milk, okay? So, given that basic underlying reality, it doesn't matter if you use money, labor vouchers, kings, gulags, CEOs, it doesn't matter because the underlying reality of all of that doesn't change. Okay, so let's say we bring in, we replace the CEOs and the money with your labor vouchers and your gulags and Stalin and Mao and all the rest of them. Does it change the fact that people want more than there is? How do you solve that problem?
Okay, so here's the thing. You brought up an interesting point there. It's something that actually Marx says. It's kind of like relative inequality. You know, if someone has a house that suits their needs, but then right next to it is built. Hey.
Here's the thing. Xexizy, you sort of, on your sort of side of things, you've sort of been dominating the conversation a little bit, so I'd like to sort of hear from
you're right.
and
Sorry about that.
Badmouse as well, like what their thoughts are on this. Finish, you got anything to add?
Badmouse can go first if he has something.
Well, I was just saying, the idea is not to get to, you know, what, literally what everyone gets a swimming pool if someone has a swimming pool, that sort of thing. Again, we said we're not for equality of outcome, we're for equality of opportunity, we're for economic equality. Okay. Can somebody on the breadline do as well or effectively or actualize their freedoms as much as Bill Gates? Okay, because I don't think he's able to do that, so I don't think we have equality of opportunity, because Bill Gates' kids are going to do a lot better than my friend's kids.
Yeah, but that just comes down to your definition of the term. You've got a different definition than I do, a much expanded and greater one.
Well, alright, so I just wanted to say something about the competition, because I think that you were talking about sports and that kind of competition. We're fine with that kind of competition. Like, that is when human beings are just trying to improve themselves or do something like that. That is not a problem. We consider it a fundamentally different kind of competition than this kind of economic competition. Even though the word in the English language, the word happens to be the same, it's still not the same thing. Like, you know, sports were pretty big in most socialist countries.
Yeah, but then you've got, let's go back to the whole thing you said about co-ops then, but co-ops are in competition with other co-ops. I mean, I think one of the biggest things where you're going to find co-ops these days is in things like one industry where you're going to see that is in the craft.
Well, not necessarily. They can be, but they don't have to be. In a market economy, if they have to exist in the context of a market, then they will have to. But if they exist in a planned system or some kind of other system, then, you know, they can exist in different kinds of systems.
Well, this is well, you're not saying how, though. You're just saying they can exist.
Well,
one thing I wanted to just
let
me get one point in here, is that you guys were talking about a level playing field in socialism. Okay? And the level playing field in socialism is essentially, okay, so everyone's going to start from the same place, get to create an idea, and then approach, like I said, the Minister of Innovation, okay, and see if they can get their thing done, because there's going to be limited resources and whatnot that have to be distributed, and you can only decide so much gets produced. Okay? And this, by nature, is the most oppressive thing I could possibly think of.
Not really.
Okay?
I mean,
not really. So one other person, some bureaucrat, gets to decide whether I get to take my vision and put it in front of the people.
Not at all. Not at all. Like, basically,
then how does it work?
Well, in capitalism, you need to have an idea, and then you need to have money. Usually, it's not the same guy who has the money.
Don't tell me how it works in capitalism. How does it work in communism or socialism?
All right. So
let him finish his point.
All right. I will just say that in capitalism, it's usually not the same guy who has the money to invest and the guy who has the money. So usually the guy who makes the invention
Can you please speak to his point? He wants to know how it's going to work in your system.
All right. So you are born, you go to school, let's say you want to be like a rocket scientist, all right?
Hang on, I'm just going to interject here. Is there I know Agent wants to make a final point, but is there anyone else that wants to make a final point on this subject before we move on?
I'll make a sort of final point, I guess, yeah.
Okay.
So, if you want to be a rocket scientist,
I'll let Agent... Okay, I'll let you finish, and then Agent, and then Badmouse. Okay.
you apply for a school. If you're good enough, like if your grades are good enough, whatnot, there might be a test. You will qualify for the school. Then you become this this scientist, and then in the scientific field, there is a meritocracy. If you are a good enough scientist, then your ideas will be accepted better. You will be given more research money, and if it's a good thing that you come up with, they will start mass producing it. But like when you were talking about...
How do you know it's a good thing?
Well,
let them finish.
Well, like for example, I'm just going to use the AK-47 as an example. Like when they came up with that, they just figured, all right, it's a really good gun, so it's a success. But if like you were talking about the tractor, how let's have 20 different tractors versus one tractor. Like we could even have 20 different tractors. Let's have 20 different projects making tractors and see which one is the better. Like we can do that in socialism. But
so everybody who comes up with an invention then gets to put it to market.
Well, in the market, you wouldn't.
Wait, hang on. Let finish.
Well, no, there's still a market, but right, because you're going to have to get consumer feedback.
Bantu, I've just got to mute you for a second. No offense, Bantu. I was just let finish his point, and then we'll go agent.
In a capitalist market, you would need to make this. You would have to convince an investor that this idea is going to sell, even if it's something horrible, something that has like food with lead in it. If it's going to sell, they're probably going to make it unless somebody puts an end to it. But in socialism, everybody has the same chance to be. Not of course. Some cities are going to have better universities than other cities, but like. You're going to have a chance to go to university, get education, and stuff like that. So there's more of a meritocracy. It has less to do with money and less to do with luck.
Okay, Agent, you wanted to make a point?
Yes. At one point, somebody made the point that human beings like cooperate the most out of all the animals. I just wondered, I've done quite a bit of reading around, biology and genetics and this sort of thing, and I mean that's just not true. I mean the famous sociobiologist is E.O. Wilson, he made his career as an expert in ants. Okay, he speaks at length about this very thing in his book on human nature. Okay, ants or bees have got something much closer to true communism, I'd argue, than human beings have ever achieved. Okay, Jonathan Haidt talks about at length in his book The Righteous Mind how we are 10% bee and 90% chimp. So we're selfish, but we also have this capacity to work together, and this makes us naturally groupish, which is why we like playing games like hockey. We actually respond really well to being in an in-group who defines ourselves in competition with an out-group, but we don't think very well on the level of like all of mankind. And there's been a lot of research, there's a lot of data on this. You can follow up these books that I'm telling you about, which have got, minute footnotes. I would just encourage anybody who's listening to this stream to look into what people have actually found out about human nature over the past 30, 40, 50 years. Because it's not like there hasn't been research into these topics. Pinker's Blank Slate also has got plenty of data on exactly these sorts of questions. So that was my point.
Okay, Badmouse? No, Xexizy, Badmouse.
Okay. This is sort of just a final summing up point, I guess, before we move on to the next thing. Regards to what you were talking about in regards to like how socialism would work or something like that. Okay. What is like the best way to promote these innovations? If you just take a good look at your system right now, okay, is the best way to allow people who, have those ideas, have education, whatever, to come together, get the resources they need to be able to make these things for themselves? Or is the best way, as basically what we have right now, is to allow the vast majority of people to basically be de facto given zero chance of becoming the next Einstein or Source Games, and make them work hours and hours and hours and hours to produce things that we probably don't even need in comparison to stuff like healthcare or water, okay? And then if they've gone through all of that, okay, hours and hours working every single day, they might be able to have the chance of saying, here's my idea. That's just what I'm going to say there. That's fine.
That's
okay. No, hang on. We'll move on to the next topic, the final topic, actually. And that question, we'll start with the socialists on this question, and then we'll do final thoughts where we can just sort of summarize things. We'll start with the capitalists on that one. But Has a true free market ever existed? How would it be attained? You have 10 minutes max socialists.
Apparently I've been dominating things, so I'll leave it on to you guys to lead off with.
Shall I go again?
Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll just say I think most people on the other side would probably answer no. Have I agreed with that? That there hasn't been a free market? I think so.
Get our answer, don't worry. You can.
Okay, right, fine. The point is, like, yes, there hasn't been a free market, okay, and I don't think there will be able to ever be one. Capitalism grew with the state in mind. It needs it to maintain. Sorry, what am I doing? It needs the state to maintain class distinctions and so forth, okay? And when markets eventually crash, as they always do, the state needs to come in there to make sure that it works properly. Okay, as we can see, I don't really understand how on earth people genuinely think that they're going to be able to bring forth this free market without just basically all we're doing is just resetting the clock to 1776 and we'll just roll forward again. I can't really see anything apart from that happening because that's exactly what's happened right now. People who say that, I know you guys probably aren't, but people who say that stuff like the founding fathers, that was the best kind of free market we possibly had. I don't see any other reason apart from just going straight forward because we live under the same conditions. These are the same conditions that have been created from, the private ownership of the means of production, the institution of wage labor, and the producing of goods for profit. That's if it has those things, then it's basically just going to bounce off whatever conditions it's in. That's the point.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I want to quickly return to an earlier point about the in-groups and out-groups. I just want to reiterate that we are totally fine with, at least I'm totally fine with the idea of having, like, let's say there's like a steel factory or something, and they say, like, our steel factory, our group is much better than those other workers in that other steel factory. We can produce more and we're smarter, like, that kind of competition, that's totally fine. It's, but when it comes to has free market capitalism or free market ever existed, or could it be, it depends how you define free market, but in my opinion, like, the classic sort of industrialization, industrial revolution era capitalism, that was back then, and then as a course, as a result of historical processes, that came to an end. So feudalism and colonialism led to the birth of capitalism, and then in the course of capitalist competition, certain corporations became more successful, and capital accumulated and accumulated more and more, and as a result, over decades and centuries, you now have these multinationals that are bigger than small countries, and there was so much capital in these capitalist countries eventually, and this happened in the biggest capitalist countries first, so the UK, France, Germany. They had so much capital that they had to start exporting it to other countries to make more profits and to get new markets. Like, the market was saturated, so they were like, oh, great, let's go somewhere else where we can sell products. And at first, capitalism was selling commodities to other countries, but as it developed, it began not selling commodities and shipping commodities over, but it actually started to ship capital itself. So invest in other countries. And then we get more and more to this, what we have today, which is that there's these multinationals, and it's very monopolistic international monopoly capitalism, where these imperialist countries own most things in the world. So we not only do we have a class divide and an inequality within the capitalist West, but we also have the inequality between the capitalist West and then most other countries.
Okay, is there anything that could be added?
One more thing.
I'll make a point.
Sorry, one more thing. I just want to say that, and is it possible to recreate what existed in the good old days of the Industrial Revolution? No, it's not possible to recreate it.
Cool. Okay, so yeah, in regards to the free market, like, in theory, you could have an anarcho-capitalist system. You could, in theory, privatize all state apparatus and have and still have production for exchange, and therefore a capitalist society. However, because of simply the way that history develops, it just can't actually be realized in the real world. Because, an example I want to draw on is there are these people who, while they technically believe in worker ownership of the means of production, they also believe in nationalism and racism, and they're basically like Nazis, but kind of not Nazis. They're called Strasserists, if you've heard of them. Now, theoretically, such a society where you have worker ownership of the means of production, yet nationalistic and racism and stuff like that, could exist. However, simply due to the way that socialism must inevitably arise out of capitalism, that being you need an international proletariat to fight an international bourgeoisie, and not a proletariat divided on race or class, because that's what the bourgeoisie do to soften worker movements by dividing them on race and class. Race and nationality, rather, sorry. So simply because there's literally no way you could ever actually get a proletarian movement or revolution in that manner. Yes, well, in theory, if you remove it from historical development, a society like that could work. It will never actually happen in the real world. And I feel like a true free market capitalism is the same thing. Because of the way that capitalism inevitably had to come out of feudalism, which was through this thing called primitive accumulation, which is basically, Marx talks about this, where it's like the capitalist mode of production presupposes a certain property relation, that you have some people who own the means of production, and you have the majority of people who can only sell their labor. And that's how things were back then, almost completely, and today we still have a very large part of the population which are just like that. So capitalism needed this property relation to come into existence, yet but the only way that it could happen was through some kind of Marx likes to use the metaphor of like the original sin, so through this primitive accumulation. But the primitive accumulation, it was extremely violent. It was basically straight up stealing tools and land from the peasants and forcibly moving them into the cities against their will, which actually, funnily enough, is the origins of the police force. To keep them in check and actually get them into the cities. So because this required such violence and such force to actually kind of, kick-start the property relation that would set the stage for the capitalist mode of production to really take off out of feudalism, it required a big and strong state. And once this big and strong state already existed and was already intertwined with the existing bourgeoisie, once the police force had become a part of the state and was originally intended in this way to keep factory workers under control, and continues to, it's still built on that same structure. It's not the exact same as it was back then, of course, but you see my point. Because of the way that capitalism inevitably had to come out of feudalism, it just, having free market capitalism, yes, in its own little fantasy world detached from reality, it could work, but just purely because of the way that historical development has gone and the way it had to go, we're never going to see it in the real world. So sorry if that was really long-winded, but I hope I got my point across there.
Okay, is there anything you want to add to that, Finish, or Badmouse?
No.
Okie
doke. Sorry, I was muted. Just something random that came up. My Russian comrade messaged me and said that the AK was actually developed in a contest with a bunch of other guns.
Okay. And Badmouse?
Well, there you go. You're now probably going to go and say that's capitalism.
Okay.
Let's all be capitalists now. Can we be done with this?
Well, at least he's honest about it. If he was really partisan,
that.
Like if he was partisan ideologue, he just would have,
No, like I'm saying they chose the best gun. Like it's meritocracy.
But I'm going to ask the question now to the capitalist free market side of things. Has a true free market ever existed, and how would it be attained?
Okay, can I take this one quickly? The answer is yes, and it's horrific. When we say free market, what we're talking about is a regulated market that people can access freely. We're not actually talking about a market in which anyone can trade anything they like, because that was most of human history with markets. They traded things like sex slaves and children. you don't actually want like an unregulated market, just in case that's what people think. And I think when dealing with socialists, that is what they think we mean with a free market. So yes, it has existed. No, it's not really desirable. What we want is free access to the market. Carry on.
What's the difference?
We'll come
Well,
to
it's their
it.
point. It's their sort of conversation.
Hang on, no, it's all right.
Yeah.
What do you mean? What's the difference?
What's the difference between a free market and free access to the market? I genuinely don't know.
Free access to the market is that the market is regulated and the rules apply to everyone, and anyone can approach the market in the rules that are set to operate and trade within it. But most of the time, I think socialists, when they say free market, they mean literally no rules, and that's
right. Okay, so fair enough.
Yeah, I think if you look at a free market, if it was to be truly free and unrestricted, that's hell. Nobody wants that, and I think that it did exist. It was called the state of nature.
Yeah,
right.
Any pre-modern civilization basically
was in a free market, and life was nasty.
Government control is a lot more difficult when communication is a lot more inferior. So effectively, the Carthaginians would have had a completely free market, and they used to pay people in women. The Balearic Islanders used to get paid in oiled virgins. That was. I'm not joking. I'm not even joking about that. Right?
That's a great example.
Anarcho-capitalism.
Nobody wants that. That's madness. Like, you would ruin the planet, and you would end up utterly
which is why free access to the market that people are interested in.
Because that's, what we're talking about, I think when we talk about free markets, the real conversation isn't really, has there ever been a free market? Do we want free markets? The question is, how do we constrain the free market effectively? What's the best way to go about doing it? Because we all accept, we're not psychotic. We accept that if you free the market completely, we'll just destroy ourselves in no time.
Hey, Delos used to trade 10,000 slaves a day. Imagine what that'll do for the economy.
Good point.
So just making the destiny argument there. Sorry, carry on.
Yeah, no worries. So So coming back to the concept of how we constrain the market and how we control the damage, that capitalism does, because capitalism does do damage. There's a cost to this, right? We're not going to sit here and pretend that capitalism. That's one thing I think that really distinguishes the right from the left, is the left seems to offer this concept that we're going to have this perfect utopian world where nothing ever goes wrong. And the capitalists are saying, well, no, shit's going to happen, right? Bad things are going to happen. You're going to have loss. People are going to suffer. You can never get away from this. And you have to accept that that's just reality. There's always going to be some cost in life moving forward. So the idea that, we go from top-down regulation, to constrain the market, the problem with that is, once again, the externalities that it creates. When solutions exist within the market, Bill Joy made a really interesting point a long while ago about how we should really be using insurance, in a much more active way to constrain market activities, by creating captive plans and whatnot, where capital and money can be put aside in order to deal with the problems as they arise. And a perfect example, just a simple way of putting it is, if you want to do pipelines, for example, they have huge potential environmental damage. The standards right now, and I think we'll all universally agree, are not even remotely good enough. And everybody agrees with that. But if you essentially force them, if you can regulate them to say, the only regulation you need from the government on this is for them to say, listen, you need to carry an insurance plan that is sufficient to cover any potential loss that comes out of this. You put that insurance company in charge, and they're going to come in now, and they're going to have risk managers all over that pipeline company. Making sure that their processes are up to speed. They're going to be checking on them left, right, and center, because they've got skin in the game. And that's one of the comments that hasn't been brought up at all throughout this, is the nature of skin in the game. There's a loss that you're going to end up facing if you don't do things properly. So one of the things about a properly functioning free market is that you have to allow the companies within that market to accept their losses as well as their profits. And that is one thing that doesn't tend to happen when you're using regulators that can be captured. Because an insurance company isn't going to get captured, because they're on the hook legally. So you need insurance companies, and you need a robust court system. And that's just off the top there. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll have a little go at this as well. I agree with both Sargon and Bantu here that the rule of law is absolutely key. Thomas Hobbes has not stopped being true all of a sudden. I recently, I will keep on mentioning this book, Why Nations Fail. I mean, regardless of which side you're on of this, you have to read that book, okay?
It's very good.
One of the reasons that the free market flourished in the UK, in this country, as opposed to certain other countries, is because we developed robust, inclusive institutions as opposed to extractive ones, okay? Now, we can argue, like, it was inclusive to a point. You know, at one point it was just like men of a certain class, you know, women weren't included, you know, the very poorest weren't included, but it was inclusive enough so that inclusivity started to spread, okay? We had that here. They didn't do it in Spain. It's one of the reasons why, the Spanish kind of lost their, global hegemony or their global advantage, okay? I will answer the question directly. The closest we've come, to, you know, a free market under these conditions so I'm not talking about the ANCAP kind of insane state of nature. I'm talking about, you know, laissez-faire was in the 19th century. This was during the British Empire, of course, during which workers in London and elsewhere in the United Kingdom, saw a 90% increase in their wages in real terms. 90%, okay? Don't compare them to workers now. Compare them to workers. Compare the living conditions to what they were like in 1750, okay? If you want to think about Dickens's London, okay? And then the other place where they saw a kind of genuine kind of laissez-faire conditions was over in the USA, places like the Wild West, where they had, I mean, yeah, it was a bit of a zoo, but they had tremendous growth. And during that period, products came down to affordable price points, okay, which would have been undreamt of just like 50 years previously, like under mercantilism in the 18th century, okay. There was an artificial, like, products were artificially kept higher because of ridiculous kind of tariff policies. You know, I wouldn't underestimate the impact of David Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage. I'm sure Marx would be a fan of that as well. In my view, what happened after then, like people like FDR in the USA or the Clement Attlee government in this country probably started to overcompensate. They overregulated, but I think that's an argument for another day with a different bunch of people. But so you know, I think the results when we did have laissez-faire were actually pretty good for the worker. Real change in the longue durée, as Brudel would say. So that's what I have to say.
Okay, is there anything you want to add, Sargon or Bantu?
Yeah, I actually really second Why Nations Fail, and you can read Soul, Wealth, Poverty and Politics and Guns, Germs and Steel to really see why the areas of the world that are utterly impoverished are inevitably impoverished. Even if capitalism never existed and Europe went full communist and still was, these areas of the world would still be in complete poverty. The reason they're not as impoverished as they could be is because of capitalism. So, you know, and again, I go back to the, 15 years, halve the global poverty rate. There's the facts of the matter are on our side. Getting out of the theory of it, the physical existence of people now is better because of capitalism, and it always is. And every time there's a drive to go towards socialism, it goes badly and people start going hungry. So, capitalism isn't perfect, but it's just a superior system. And it's demonstrated this in material terms, which are the only terms that socialists give a damn about. So,
and if I could add on to that.
Yeah.
One thing that's interesting with that is, one of the biggest problems that you have with capitalism does have to do with resource scarcity, and which is fundamentally a technological issue. But I think we all agree that eventually the whole point of capitalism, Marx said this, everybody kind of said this, and I don't think anyone here denies it, and it's a little off topic, but I think it's kind of important to the overall conversation, is that we eventually end up in socialism. Okay? At the end of the day, once all's said and done, we're going to get there. Okay? Because eventually the drive for greater efficiency, greater automation and technology leads us to a world where labor is obsolete completely. Okay? And there is no labor to trade. And obviously at that point, wealth disparity is a huge deal. You cannot have a world where you have 1% of the population owning 100% of everything, the other 99% will rise up and kill them. Okay? I mean, this is the Gini coefficient in essence, right? Wealth disparity is a huge predictor of social unrest. Okay? So, at some point, we have to transition into socialism or something that resembles that. I mean, I think calling it socialism is a little odd because, that's got some other implications to it because there is no, means of production. It's pretty much everyone's got their own 3D printer and it produces what they need. But this is why when I look at it, I sort of see, we have this concept of, you guys keep harping on revolution, and I think this is where a lot of us sort of look at that and go, well, dude, that's just evil.
I'll just point out that the time has expired now, so.
Okay, no problem. I'll just finish my point. We'll move on. Yeah. Is that cool? Because you're going to get there anyways through natural evolution. You probably just won't see it in your lifetime, but you want to. Because you want to get to this utopia and have this wonderful, fantastic place, and you don't want to live in a time of struggle. Well, guess what? We do struggle, but we struggled way less than anyone in 1850, who struggled way less than anyone in 1750, who struggled way less than anyone in 1650. We're doing better and better, and we're lucky to be living in the time we're in, and the fact of the matter is that we all live in first world nations makes us supremely privileged, and we should be happy with this progress, be delighted with the good luck that we have. Eventually we will get to socialism. We will get there, but through evolution, not revolution. That's just the point that I think is supremely important in this conversation, because that gets there naturally, not through people thinking they can force it on others.
Okay.
So why is it that capitalism needed
hang on. We'll get to this. Hang on. I'm just going to, just as a formality, to introduce the question once more to the open forum. You've got 10 minutes to discuss this. Has a true free market ever existed, and how would it be attained?
Yeah.
Sargon wanted to speak, and then Xexizy.
Yeah, Xexizy, what did you just ask there before?
I said, well, if it's if modes of production can shift through natural evolutions, then why is it that literally every shift in mode of production throughout history has always been a revolution?
Because up until this point, all systems have been highly oppressive.
I'd like to also, I would also like to, in the place where, I think this is a very important thing about revolutions. The United Kingdom, as far as I'm concerned, has never had a true violent revolution. We had Cromwell. We had Cromwell, okay, and then we had the so-called Glorious Revolution, okay. But Britain is a very good case study of incremental change. Incremental change versus in France, for example, where they have they're doing the Fifth Republic now, okay.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
So incremental change is what we're taught. It's like a little bit. That's why Britain still doesn't have a constitution, and and that has been the model that has worked. And the violent kind of, Foucauldian kind of paradigm shift model of violent change hasn't been a thing. Okay, let's pick another one, like what are the epistemic Pierre Machery's epistemic shifts, say. Okay, there's a Marxist thinker for you, okay, where it's not really how things have happened. It's be like there will be something that comes along that is a game changer, but it comes through incremental change and moderate reform, and every generation things get a tiny little bit better, and you don't need to kill everybody in order to achieve it.
Can I say something?
I really want to respond to those 2 points. So, Sargon, would you say that Coca-Cola death squads are oppressive? Because they exist. They literally exist. They do. In South America, they literally hire death squads to kill union leaders.
Yeah, but that's not capitalism.
Oh, it's not true capitalism.
No, it's not even slightly capitalism.
But it's Coca-Cola.
No.
It's voluntary exchange between two consenting individuals.
Stop.
Can I just ask, I will say that one thing that will probably help your argument, Xexizy, is to not say Coca-Cola death squads. Just say death squads,
But I love that term.
Yeah, it's highly amusing as well. The thing is, right, a capitalist system protects the property of the people within it, right? If a corporation can hire death squads, then it's not a system that's operating under the
It's
standard
still capitalism.
logic. No, it's not.
It's
It
still
might be no,
corporation.
this
Things
is
are still being
socialist,
produced
right?
by
They go, well, is it not? There's private property. It's capitalism. Bollocks. There's private property under feudalism.
No, I'm not saying private property
If
is
a
capitalism. I'm
corporation
saying-
can hire death squads, it's anarcho-capitalism, and we've already said that that's crap.
But
Well, then that's capitalism.
No, I wouldn't even call that anarcho-capitalism. I mean, like, that's just like warlordism.
Well, it's
Yeah,
not,
and
This,
it's what
this is
capitalism
where
needs
the
to.
rule of law has broken down.
And it's what capitalism needs to in these areas.
No, it's
not
not.
what
They want to
South
protect
America is
their
heavily
interests and their
socialist.
profits. What?
no. It's not how it works. This is why you all need to read this Why Nations Fail. All that happens in those scenarios is when you let cronyism run rampant. You haven't enforced the rule of law effectively, and institutions are going to extract it rather than inclusive. That's all that's happened there, and it doesn't matter if you call it socialism, bloody anarchy. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, fine.
That's what's happened.
Xexizy, can I say something?
Say it's not capitalism then. But hold on, really quick. We'll say it's not capitalism then. Whatever it is we live under today, that is a highly
we don't
oppressive
live under
system.
that.
And that.
Is
Well,
the
yes, we do,
consequence.
because it's happening right now. I mean,
Then-
you and me don't live under that, but it does happen in this world.
Yeah, okay, well, let's talk about Venezuela then, if we want to talk about
Okay.
that. Okay, no, but this is the point.
But that's not really related to
Let's not get
We
so
actually live.
fucking
No,
sidetracked.
Yeah, that is really sidetracked.
Right.
But my point is,
No,
whatever we live
Venezuela.
under today.
No. Venezuela, I think, is
And we
actually
just-
relevant. I think
It is, but I was just pointing out that, look, if we're going to say, well, look, there's somewhere in the world that Coca-Cola is doing something bad in, then, okay, well, let's talk about
Well,
somewhere
use it. What we use is oppressive system.
Badmouse wanted to raise a
That
point.
was your
Well, hang
claim.
on, let me actually respond to this, though, because this is the thing, right? Look, I'm not saying that corporations aren't dangerous. They are, inherently. I mean, this is a great example. You know, the Coca-Cola Corporation can't do that in capitalist countries because we have firm laws and regulations and whatnot, right? However, if you go to some corrupt socialist hellhole in South America and you offer the government huge amounts of money and they say, okay, well, yeah, I'm just going to take all this money, you do what the fuck you like, then they do. Because corporations don't give a damn. You know, they are.
But your
they're just
original
there for-
point,
they are extractive
was
in
that what we
nature.
live under today isn't a highly oppressive system. That was your original point.
Sorry, say again.
Your original point that was, unlike slave society and feudalism, what we live under today wasn't a highly oppressive system like they were.
Yes, what we live under in
Right.
the,
So,
where we
what we live under in the West,
so
you're only talking about the West. So, does that mean then that socialist revolution is possible in the third world?
It's already happened in the third world. Well, I mean,
Yeah, but again,
what they call socialism.
so you're saying that because you said revolution wasn't possible because we don't live under a highly
I
oppressive
didn't say it was
system.
impossible. I said
Can
it was
we move
unnecessary.
on from this, please?
Okay, we'll move on. Sorry.
What's important?
Yes, wait. Before you cutting agent, Badmouse wanted to say something earlier. I think it's fair that you can talk because he's been a bit quiet.
Okay, finish. What did you want to talk about? Sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say that I find it pretty interesting that they actually like guns, germs, and steel because usually, I just somehow I thought that was surprising that they actually like that book, but
Why?
That's my question.
I don't know. Usually
Hold on.
libertarians have, and people who I don't know. Usually they haven't liked it, but
It's
anyway,
fantastic.
We're libertarians here.
Yeah.
Can I just
but what
talk
I
about
that
something-
wasn't. All right, go ahead.
Let Badmouse do it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to sort of talk about. Well, firstly, Venezuela has more private industry than it does state industry. Okay, first of all, and also, it's actually moving sort of onto a different topic, so something that academic agencies have with, extractive economies and so forth. It's interesting how you don't relate sort of the same thing towards socialist systems. Okay, because if you didn't have the USA, the UK, the Netherlands, then you'd be looking at capitalism back then. And you'd be saying, it's trying to get itself together in Latin America, where places like Spain and so forth extracted all the resources and left basically no infrastructure there, apart from extracting minerals. And you say that capitalism is failed. You celebrate it now because it survived. It's a survivor.
No, not at all. We celebrate it in the places where, like Canada and the United States and.
So in first world imperialist countries.
But
Canada's an imperialist country, is it?
Yes.
the reason
Is it?
the
I
reason
mean,
I didn't realize I was part of an empire.
imperialism is not only tanks; it's more owning things. Like
Yeah,
you
like-
just use the armies to
Socialist
facilitate.
I think one of the really important principles we should have established it a lot earlier than we have now is that basically what you're doing when you impose socialism or some other thing that isn't the free market is you're replacing market power with political power. And when you replace market power with political power, corruption inevitably follows, which is why in all these different places with dictatorships and extractive governments, and call it socialist, call it authoritarian, call it what you want, this is why you get the Coca-Cola death squad in those places. Of course, if you're in a place where you're allowed to like get away with that stuff by bribing people, it will happen, and that is why the rule of law is absolutely key, and it's also why it doesn't happen in places like.
Sorry, just one tiny point. We did actually have sort of what could be considered death squads in Western countries back in sort of the turn of the century. We just don't have them now because. Well,
and whose death squads were they?
It's because our unions aren't as
capitalist death squads.
as the ones.
This was you're talking about altercations between the unions and the
Pinkertons, pistoleros.
Can I say something to academic agents' point? So I think it's admirable, it's admirable that you think that we need to have the rule of law and everything. But I always thought that it was so I don't know, so funny when liberals would say that, oh, capitalism would be good if we just got money out of politics. But like, it's so funny. Like, how do you get money out of politics in a system that's based on money? Like, the whole notion that economic power and political power are not connected is kind of laughable. Of course they are. Like, here, we don't have death squads here, but the capitalists still control all the politics.
Right, and this is why leftism is a problem in general, because take examples where crony capitalism is allowed to flourish. It's because politicians have incentives too, okay? Mm-hmm. But politicians' incentives aren't money; they're like votes. They're interest groups. So when you get like, I don't know, farmer subsidies, for example, that creates all sorts of untold problems for economies everywhere because it perverts the incentives, but it will win the politician votes in the short term. That is a problem with, I guess, a systemic problem with politics, and it doesn't get resolved with democracy or not democracy. Like, dictators do this too. There's another book which my friend always talks about called The Dictator's Handbook, but there's a brilliant little video by C.P. Gray, the Rules for Rulers. Those rules don't
No,
change.
They do. I watched that and like.
Okay, explain to me how those rules change.
Before we go into that, I wanted to ask academic agent, like, I don't, maybe I missed it, but do you believe that you can, like, you explained what laissez-faire was and that was the best thing, if I understood correctly, but can you get back to that?
How do you mean, like it was the best? That was the sharpest period of growth the world has ever seen.
Yeah. So, do you think that kind of policies can be implemented again, and we can have laissez-faire again?
It's been made very difficult by Keynesianism, by embedded socialism in our countries. But I don't actually think that all of those are bad things. Like, I haven't made up my mind on all of the. Like, I would like to see less regulation in general. Ones that pervert incentives, but I also like, there are some things, even Hayek himself said this, there are some areas where you do need to kind of guide things because the incentives are messed up, or, so I don't think, like, markets generally work, but there are some areas where, you may need to get involved a bit more. I don't know, like, there are ones that they're so complex that I haven't even figured out where like healthcare. I don't know what to do with that.
Time is up, by the way.
So,
was that
any final points that anyone wants to add to that? And then we'll do closing statements and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, I would like to add one thing when we're talking about, because I think something that needs to be kind of brought up at the very least, just so we're all aware of it. Because I feel like throughout this debate, maybe there have been a lot of connotations and assumptions that socialism works on some kind of dictatorship or malevolent dictatorship or something like that. Or that, we're just going to trust the politicians don't get corrupted. Basically, the I guess, core tenets, as it were, for the workers' state during the revolution. I believe that after the transition that the society is stateless and you no longer have to worry about that stuff. But during the actual transition phase, the workers' state, it has I guess, core principles that Lenin describes in The State and Revolution and have actually been applied multiple times in the real world and have worked pretty well. And these three main things, it's representative democracy. The representatives are chosen by the workers themselves. These representatives are then subject to recall at any time by the workers who vote them in. And then that these representatives are paid at workman wages. So this eliminates careerism. This is basically the general socialist idea of how we're going to have central planning and how we're going to have, a workers' state that actually works in the interest of the workers and acts as a tool of the workers by using these things. Again, we're very much for more democracy, if anything. We're for more control. We're not about entrusting power into the immortal science of the vanguard and just hoping that they do everything okay. We want to turn the state into a tool of the workers where the people in the states, their own will doesn't matter. It's all about what the workers want them to do. And again, it has been implemented. Again, we've talked about this earlier, due to various reasons of how they dealt with fascists or the bourgeoisie, that they were eventually crushed, but that obviously had nothing to do with the internal political workings of their democracy. But yeah, I just figured that was worth kind of bringing up, just so people are more aware that that's what socialists are trying to go for, if that makes sense. Because I do get the feeling that a lot of people who are newer to this still think that we all just want the benevolent dictator kind of thing. That's really not what it is at all.
Yeah.
Capitalists. I'll just let the capitalists respond because we've just got to wrap this up quickly.
I'd like to just say a quick thing on that. I mean, I don't think that you're wrong in what you've said there, and I don't think anyone thinks that you're not. But I think the biggest damning thing in this entire conversation is you didn't answer the most important question that was asked, which is how do these products get to market in the first place in a fair way? When you guys were pressed on this before, I mean, it just fumbled and turned into things about becoming a doctor and a researcher, and there was no solid answer given. And this is the essence of what we're saying, is that the system essentially represses freedom and choice. I mean, Karl Popper is famous for saying, that he would be a socialist if only he could find a way to reconcile it with freedom. Okay? And this is one of the greatest thinkers of all time. And I mean, he couldn't do it. And I guess the question I have for you is, if all of these truly great minds like that have looked at this and gone, can't happen, what makes you think you guys are going to get it right?
Very, very, very quickly. I'll let someone else deal with the bulk of that. However, Einstein was a fucking communist. What the fuck? Like, Picasso was a communist. There are many, many great minds who are communists, so that's
that's not necessarily a great argument.
Okay. So, Sargon.
Anyway, I'll let someone else deal with the bulk of that.
Any final points, Agent and Sargon, on that?
You go ahead, Agent.
Well, I mean, it's all well and good saying these people supported it, but did they solve the problem? Did they solve the fundamental issue that Bantu?
His point was that...
Don't interrupt. Don't interrupt.
Popper couldn't work it out. Did Einstein work it out? I don't think he did.
I think, well, you could read his essay if you want.
He kind of thought he did, but, whatever.
Yeah. Clearly he thought he did.
All right. I suppose we'll go now into the sort of closing statements. Since we ended things with the capitalists, we're gonna we'll start things with the capitalists this time. So we'll start with Bantu. What's your sort of closing statement on this discussion?
Shit, I didn't prepare one. I still want to just go back to, because it's a functional question, right? The one that I just want to stay on, and it's really the main thing that I'm stuck around right now, is, you guys mentioned co-ops and how wonderful they are, and I agree with you. Cooperative companies are a great idea. But once again, you still haven't answered the question of how these things come to market and how you reconcile it with freedom. Because at the end of the day, if the means of production is worker controlled, but it's still got to be apportioned by a bureaucracy. So someone's going to have to appeal to the like I said, the chief of innovation, or whatever his title is, and whatever bureaucracy handles that. And what the people get to see and what the people get to interact with still goes through the filter of a small group of elites. And that is, like I said, completely repressive. So I don't know how anyone can suggest on any level that this is the best way of going about things. And you haven't provided any mechanism by which this happens. It's just been rhetoric that we're going to do this, and when we do it, it'll be great. Well, but you haven't said how. And every communist I've ever spoken to, I ask them, how does it run? How does it run? How does it run? And no one can answer it. Absolutely no one can answer it. And until you can give us a document that outlines exactly how this runs, okay, it's just fantasy.
Okay. Agent, what's your sort of closing statement on this?
Really, I just think that, throughout this argument, virtually all of the empirical evidence has been on our side. I think the moral argument is firmly on our side. I mean, on the moral point, they literally had nothing. They were talking about, it's right for like 17-year-old kids to steal McDonald's from owners and things. I mean, nonsense. The final thing is that the biggest thing they failed to do through this whole discussion is, I mean, they're trying to ask us to replace the most successful societal process ever developed in the history of man. Okay, we've got, there's another great book called Why the West Rules for Now by Ian Morris. He's got graphs of like societal development and nutrition standards and absolute poverty levels and all the rest of it. And you can see there was a little peak by the Roman Empire, then like a massive period of decline, and then basically like a cliff upwards curve when the Industrial Revolution happened. So that's our system, and they're literally arguing to replace it based on things like 2 months of the Paris Commune, and this like small period for 3 weeks when the system worked once, so it's kind of like there's a lot of hoping and wishing, and not a lot of hard evidence for any of the things that they've said.
Okay, and Sargon?
Yeah, I think it was Finnish Bolshevik who said that economic freedom, he was tying it to personal freedom, and I agree. I completely agree, which is really one of the reasons that I don't want to be part of the Dell's centrally planned economy. I would rather be able to make my own choices, and I don't see how that's going to happen under a socialist system. But I also agree with Bantu, where, the prediction is it will eventually arise out of capitalism, and I agree, I think it will. Eventually, there will be no more production for humans to do. It'll all be automated. There will effectively be no economic classes, because money will become outmoded eventually. But we're definitely in no state to reach that Star Trek utopia in our lifetimes. It's something that will come in the future, so we don't need to worry about it actually arriving, but we can't rush it, because every time they try to implement the socialist revolution, it goes horribly, horribly wrong. So let's just, and like Academic Hayden said, this is the best system mankind has ever had. So we may as well keep using it until something better actually evolves out of it. And that's what I was trying to say with we're not in a system where we have a repressive group of people stopping us from doing things. Worker co-ops exist in a capitalist system. Independent entrepreneurs exist in a capitalist system. We're actually as free as we've ever been. We don't have an aristocracy sitting on top of our societies, keeping everyone in line and making sure that everyone pays fealty to them. We're actually not in that position. And so we don't need to change it at all, really, because the system will change over time on its own. So we just need to stay the course, actually. And honestly, if you look at all the data, things are just getting better for humans. So it's not flawless, but it's definitely good.
Okay, thank you very much, capitalist side. I'd also like to hear from Badmouse, then Finnish, then Xexizy. So your closing statement, please, Badmouse.
Okay, right. So the main basis of our arguments is on the capitalist side, want reform. On our side, we want revolution. Okay, now it just so happens that 100 years ago, a woman called Rosa Luxemburg wrote a book by the same name, Reform and Revolution, which I'm currently reading, where she outlines how capitalism will always adapt and sustain itself regardless of the cost. It will do whatever it can to maintain itself, because that's what it just does. And I ask you to take a look at the world around you and think that and ask yourself whether or not this is the end of history, that capitalism is here, and that we just need to tinker with it a little bit, like we have for the past 200 years without success. And it always responds to boom and bust, and it always responds to the fluctuations of the market, okay, irrespective of however much we control it. Now, with all the resources and machinery that we have, and just think that we should still just stick to things like the status quo. And people like Murray Bookchin said that the things should remain as they are today is the acidic thinking that destroys basically all critical thought. And I know some will say that actually you do want change, yet you're still perfectly okay with the exploitation of workers' labour, causing them to make 3 chairs to buy 1 in a system that was stolen largely, you're laughing, right? Stolen largely away from people and for the benefit of the few at the expense of the many. That's what basically we live in today. And our aims are clear. Socialists want worker control. The factories, just one second, want them to take a huge part of the economy. We don't simply want people to either work for a small group of owners or die, which is the vast majority of us. So,
Okay, Finish, what is your closing statement on this?
Alright, so first I'm going to talk about a little bit about the worker control argument and the bureaucracy and stuff like that, because you brought that up many times, how it's not freedom because I have to ask some bureaucrat if I can do something, and really what's happening here is that the reason that some socialist countries, like historical socialism, why they had this kind of division of labor between technocrats and everybody else, is because they started from a situation where the cultural level of the general public was basically non-existent. And we argue that when you raise the cultural level of the general public, then there is no need to have this vast difference between political elites and everybody else. And this is what Lenin says in his book. Of course, when he was talking about that, he was talking about socialism as it existed as it would exist in an industrial country, not, for example, the Russian Empire, because he didn't know at the time that they were going to be the ones who make the revolution. But then you say capitalism is just automatically going to get better, and we're going to get to socialism, and that all the empirical data is on your side. I mean, it really isn't. Like, you're looking at this small slice. You're saying that, all right, life is pretty decent for a lot of people in the industrial imperialist countries, but even in those countries you have like mass homelessness, unemployment, people not having necessary access to housing and food, and even the most basic necessities. And and especially like in most countries, like you can find the statistics if you Google for them, but like half the world, 3.6 billion people live on like $2 a day, and 80% of the people live on less than $10 a day. Now, you're saying that poverty has been reduced, but actually they're just largely messing with the stats, because they're saying that if you make more than $1.90, then you're not poor, which is ridiculous. Of course, you're really poor. And
depends on the price of the goods.
Yes.
I mean, it does.
Let him run.
In Canada, you're poor.
Of course it does. But and then if you look at countries like India and China are the countries where poverty has been reduced somewhat. Now, my Indian comrade tells me that what the Indian government actually does is they try to lift people just above the stats, so it's like you make $2, they're not poor. But we can all agree that China has a middle class now. But if you look at Africa, Africa is actually getting poorer. If you look at Europe, social democracy, which
communism in Africa.
You're probably going to say that Europe is not capitalist, but welfare capitalism is basically going away in Europe. We have austerity in Europe. Things in Europe are actually getting worse. And when you say that capitalism is just going to get better and we shouldn't do anything, I think that's ridiculous. Like, 10 million people starve every single year. Like, you don't think that, like, you can't even kill people at that rate. Like, the rate at which
World War II tends to disagree.
Well, maybe, yeah, with total war, maybe you can, but like, but really,
I'll
like
check
the idea that, can you please let me finish? The idea that we shouldn't do anything because things are just going to sort themselves out, that is the mindset of people. It's easy to say that when you're not one of those 10 million who die. Like, you can see that the people who are really suffering, they don't think it's okay. Let's just wait. It's just going to get better. There's no certainty that it's going to get better, especially since this economic system is fundamentally unstable. And not to even mention that, like, with global warming and things like that, which, like, the profit motive is basically destroying the planet. So we're lucky if we even get there. And my last thing is about oppression and things like that. You say capitalism allows co-ops to exist. Well, yes, capitalism allows co-ops to exist because they, in the context of capitalist society, don't really threaten it. But
don't.
when
The
capitalism,
craft beer industry has been taking out the
Let him finish.
no. They don't threaten the interest of the capitalist system. When capitalism has felt that it was threatened, then they've done things like they supported fascists in various countries. Even in my country, Finland, the Communist Party was banned and the Socialist country was banned because they thought it was too dangerous to have them. In the U.S., you had McCarthyism and the Red Scare, like all that stuff. So, I mean, the Soviets.
Because they didn't want to die, dude.
The Soviets they hunted enemies, but they were pretty damn threatened by external and internal enemies. So, like, this notion that capitalists would never do anything authoritarian or anything oppressive, it's just ridiculous. Of course they do, all the time.
Would you be able to sort of, I'd like to move on to Xexizy, so she just...
Yeah, I'm done.
Okay, Xexizy, what's your closing statement on this?
Alright, well, overall I think this was a pretty fun debate, actually. I had a lot of fun, and I hope you guys did too. I think everyone learned from each other. I think it's great that we've got you guys to admit that communism is inevitable, and that it really needs them. But the thing is, I mean, what I would kind of respond to that with is the fact that, you know, you guys are saying it will evolve naturally. Well, the thing is, the problem is that it has these contentions that are actually antithetical to the market, that because it goes against capitalists' interests, they're not just going to let happen on their own, because in this process, the capitalists get extremely fucked over. For instance, with automation, you guys are saying, oh, well, when we can automate enough things, we'll be able to drift towards socialism naturally. Well, the thing is, if we automate everything, the markets just implode on themselves. We can't do that in any natural way through the existing capitalist system. In regards to what central planning would look like, now, in the middle, it is a complicated topic. So in the middle of this debate, maybe we couldn't have explained it as well as possible. However, you say we need a document that goes through what everything's going to be like. Well, they actually do exist. There are two things I would recommend to you if you're a reader. First is Marx's Critique of the Gopher Program. It's pretty much the one place where he really delves into what socialism would look like. It's short, but it's a hard read and very dense, but it's really good. I would recommend trying to give it a read at least. And he does describe how a socialist society would function, how labor vouchers would function, how it would transition from capitalism, so that does exist. In regards to central planning, because Marx doesn't really talk too much about central planning in that, in regards to central planning, there is Towards a New Socialism by, what's his name, Paul Cockshott. Unfortunate name, I know, but nonetheless, he explains in Towards a New Socialism basically how central planning would function, and he does it with maths and everything. And I would recommend, if you really do want to know the details on how central planning works, you check out that book, and if you want to know the details on how labor vouchers and socialism would work, you check out Critique of the Gopher Program. So these things do exist. It's just, you know, in the middle of a debate, explaining complicated theory, it can get difficult. So sorry if we didn't do a satisfying job on that, but I think we got our points across pretty well. My very last point, though, would be, you know, again, no one really ever responded to the point on the falling rate profit, which again is just kind of condemning markets to eventually implode in on themselves, forcing us to produce for use. And this is going
fail any time now. Anytime.
No, again, look, dude. I mean, when it gets to the point where you just, I know, but when it gets to the point when you can't extract profit from commodity production anymore, then what do you do? Because that's what we're going towards. I mean, I don't know how long it's going to be, but inevitably it will happen, and it's not going to be a seamless transition like you guys suggest. It will be horrific market crash, which is going to make the 1929 look like nothing, because literally society will cease to function unless. And of course that will create a power vacuum, giving us to the inevitable fight between fascism and socialism, because that's all fascism is. It's a last-ditch effort to preserve property rights. So it's really the question of, inevitably, which side do you want to be on? Do you want to be on the side of let's construct a new society with the workers in control, or do you want to be on the side of fascism? I know that seems like a loaded question almost, and kind of, but when you look at history, that is what it comes down to, unfortunately. So yeah, it's I think I've got my point across there. I'd really recommend reading those two books. In regards to freedom and socialism, there's actually something Sargon's read as well, so you can vouch for it. The Soul of Man Under Socialism, written by Oscar Wilde. It's a very nice read, and explains why individualism flourishes under socialism. And also, as we refer to Einstein's Why Socialism isn't a bad essay either. So lots of reading there.
Right there.
Oh, there you go. What else is in there?
Yeah.
I'm glad just before the stream ended, I got to mute Sargon on his own stream.
Well, so I just wanted to say thank you very much for. It was a very tough gig, especially if you never. I know how hard it is to moderate a discussion with 6 people who all want to talk at the same time. So I think you did an excellent job. So
thank you.
Well done.
Yeah, I've actually never done this before. Like, this is my first time, but
No,
I
you
don't know.
didn't do
I've been told that I'm a bit of a diplomat, so.
My only recommendation would be don't be as afraid to pull the trigger on muting people or moving the conversation onwards. Because we did, the thing is, both sides want to have the last say on a point, so you really got to force them to move on.
Yeah.
But other than that, you were great, man, and I really thank you for stepping in to do this, because without you here, this would have turned into such a shit show.
Anyway, guys, thanks everyone for joining us. I will let Sargon sign us out.
All right. Well, again, thanks to everyone for coming. I thought this was really good fun. I'll probably do something like this again in the future. I can't believe how well this all came together.
I'd love to come on the show sometime, man.
Yeah. Well, we'll have like a one-on-one conversation to really get into the meat of the ticket system.
Nice. I look forward to it.
How you see it working. But yeah, thanks again. And Fox, man, you did a great job. Thanks so much. And thanks to everyone watching. See you later.
Bye-bye.